Okay, we have got our final session of the week, and it's a kind of sad, I guess, that it's the last one, our last time together this week. It's been, I don't know about you, but I've had a huge amount of fun. It's been hard work, as you know. We've had some long sessions. I think each of the last 2 days were over just about 2.25 hours. So you've had 4.5 hours of content, of training and questions. And we've got another busy day today, although yesterday was crazy with content. As you know, we went really deep on one of the hardest areas, and it may be that at times you might have felt overwhelmed. But as I said to you a few times, value pricing is a journey. We just have to take it one step at a time. So I'm hoping that there's something already you've taken away, some action you're going to take as a result of what you've learned. Today we'll be a bit more gentler on you. Today we've got a little bit less content because this is our last chance together for me to answer questions. And so there'll be a little bit less content, a little bit more time answering questions today. But I want to start off, same as I did yesterday. Some of you put some lovely comments in the Facebook group as to what was the best bit of yesterday, and let's just have a quick look at a few of those. And actually what I'd love to know is, thinking about the 2 days so far, what for you has been the best thing? If you were to take, what's the one thing that you've taken away that's been the best thing? If you could put it in the chat box, we read those afterwards because it helps me with future training. If I know what the best things are, I can do more of that. Anyway, Karenja said there were so many gems in today's session. Obviously that was yesterday's session, but involving the client in the pricing process, being transparent and giving you control really stood out to me. Jacqueline Johnston said, learned so much from this segment. This is an amazing process. It would have been really great if it was around when I first started a bookkeeping business. You've answered all the questions I had when I was trying to get my business off the ground and was not succeeding. And I think Jacqueline, if you're here, I think I answered that because in the same way, I wish I knew this stuff back in 1996 when I started my accounting firm. I wouldn't have made the crazy mistakes I did in the first 3 years, and it cost me a lot of money. Anyway, I wasn't around then to teach myself. Is it Shara Gunther? She said, great material. Thank you for taking the time to put it all together. Biggest takeaway for me was 2 things. Number 1, we do the fixed pricing before, I wasn't sure what you meant, before finding you, so I'm on track. Oh, you're doing that already, yes. And then number 2, the process of breaking down the clients into the transactions example, how to locate time, work, value. And Amanda Kerr said, so much valuable info in this. I'm learning so much, but I think what stood out was definitely what others have said, involving the client in the pricing process and full transparency. And there was more in her comment. Is that Bamadel? Couldn't make today's presentation. Okay, missed that. I hope you caught the recording. Barbara Willis said involving the client in the pricing process and not sending a proposal later. And I don't know if I pronounced this right, but is it G? This second session reassured me that I was doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. Good to know there is no exact formula for value pricing and that value is in the hearts and minds of our clients. My next meeting with a potential client will definitely go different. Awesome, you're going to take action. I think involving them in pricing out their package will make a huge difference in return. Thank you. See you tomorrow. So I guess you are here, G. So thank you so much for all those lovely feedback comments on the Facebook group, and let me know what has been the best bit for you for the last 2 days. That would really help. So before we dive in, a few quick things. So as you know, we are going live at this time on Monday with the brand new training, the 6-month training, where we go much deeper on how to price bookkeeping. And of course, you have 2 options. You can either enroll in the training on its own, or you can enroll in the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy. It's entirely up to you. I'll remind you later the difference between the 2. Both of them are the same investment as a monthly investment. Both of them, we close enrollments at the end of Monday. Well, actually not the very end of Monday, at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 4 o'clock UK time. So this time on Monday, we are closed because this time Monday, we're starting with a live session if you are joining me. And many of you are joining me. You've told me via the chat box, via the Facebook group. So that's kind of where we're going after this. Remember that this is the 3rd session. If you've missed either of the last 2 sessions, do try to find the time to catch up. They're all being recorded. They're all being run on Facebook Live. The recordings are being done within minutes or so of them finishing. Facebook processes them and puts them up there. We're leaving the recordings there until Monday for a few more days, for over the weekend. So if you need to catch up, do that. We then take them down because we know that if we left them up for forever, you would then decide that you'll get round to catching up someday. And someday never happens because we get busy, life gets in the way. We're going to do some questions later, so please, and I know some of you have started already, 4 of you have, use the Q&A box for questions. Use the chat box for general chat, for comments. Sarah and Emily monitor the chat box, but there are way over 100 comments now, so I won't get distracted by that. Instead, if you've got questions for me, put them in the Q&A box. As you probably know by now, Sarah's here, my partner, and she'll be helping me out with the questions. So ask questions, but please, and I can see somebody's actually put a long one, please keep your questions to 3 or 4 lines maximum, to 1 or 2 sentences. The reason for that is we got, if you were here the last 2 days, you know we've had so many questions. We spent an hour answering questions yesterday, an hour the day before. We still couldn't get through all of them. And so we tried to look for the questions that are easy to answer because they're short. If you've got a question that takes more than a minute to read the question, the problem is other people don't get their questions. And also what happens if you can't keep your question into 1 sentence, unfortunately what happens from my point of view, it's my limitation, it's my fault, I'm afraid, but what happens is when you have a long question, as Sarah's reading it, my mind's thinking of the answer to the first bit, and then the next bit comes along and I'm suddenly thinking of that and I've forgotten the first bit and it gets confusing. It's really hard to answer long questions without seeing it in writing or written down. I'm a visual person. It's my limitation. So if you've got a long question, we might miss it out. If you've got long questions, put them in the Facebook group. So keep your questions to 1 sentence, ideally 2 sentences. Keep it concise. And also remember the workbook. We've got the final section of the workbook to go through. If you haven't got, it's the same workbook as the last 2 days. So if you've got it, it's great. You can fill it in on the PDF. You do not need to print it out. If you haven't got it for any reason, Sarah or Emily will put a link to it in the chat box. You can click on the link, open it up, and then you can work through it. Okay, we're on to the last third of it. Good, because we're on day 3. Okay, what have we done so far? Quick recap, very quick recap. I started off on Tuesday by sharing with you what you've been telling me via the Facebook group are the biggest challenges with pricing, value pricing and pricing bookkeeping services. And I picked a top 10 that you've been telling me. And I said to you, my goal was to try and deal with all 10 of your biggest problems, your biggest challenges. So on Tuesday, you said to me that confidence was an issue. So I'm hoping that by now you've got some level of increased confidence. You may not feel confident yet, but your confidence is getting better. Now you're starting to get some knowledge. You've seen some systems, some processes. You've heard some stories from some amazing people doing some amazing things. So hopefully your confidence is getting better. As I've said many times, this is a journey, not a destination. It'll take time, it's difficult, but just little wins along the way. Keep learning little bits, trying new things, and your confidence will grow. We also talked about lack of knowledge as a key part of that, and hopefully now you've already had lots of ideas, strategies, frameworks that you can use. The third thing that we talked about was how do we create packages? What's the process? And on Tuesday, I walked through that. So now I hope that you have a framework, some structures for building packages. The fourth challenge you said to me was pricing way too low. And so that was really the theme of yesterday. And linked to that was uncertainty of scope. And we looked at the scope factors. I looked at primary scope factors, secondary scope factors. And we went through that interesting process where we can actually do some analysis of our client base. And then the other big challenge was how do we calculate a price? And yesterday we went through that and I talked about how do you calculate a price. So there's where we've got to so far. The next 3 challenges, the 3 that we will do today are, people have said to me, being seen as low value. How do we communicate the value of what we do? Another one is cheap competitors. And another one is how do we move our clients onto value pricing? They're the next 3 challenges that we'll deal with today. Okay, before we do that, let me remind you, I shared with you a story on Tuesday, for a news story, one I got over the last month or so from Lana Hill. And if I just pull across to here, and I said to you yesterday that we've now processed the interview and it went onto the Facebook group. And so my question for you is, have you watched the interview yet? If you haven't, you need to. I know some of you have, because Kylie Hadley said, wow, this was so great. Thank you, Mark, for interviewing Lana. It was good to hear both the struggle and success. And Lana, thank you for sharing your story. It gives me confidence just listening to you. Can't wait to hear more successes over the years to come. So if confidence is an issue, make sure you watch that video from Lana. She was stunning. Now, I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm afraid is it Xiaojin? That's my, anyway, Xiaojin, if that's right. Great interview. Thank you, Mark and Lana, for sharing this. Very inspirational, especially now I've decided to leave my current full-time company accounts job and just accept an offer working part-time as a bookkeeper for an accounting firm. I'm about to build up my own bookkeeping business on the side, so congratulations. And Jacqueline Johnston says, thanks, Lana and Mark. Amazing how Lana has developed her own business while helping others build theirs. Congrats, Lana. You're the provider. Oh, and the rest is about me. I won't talk about me. But anyway, make sure that you do watch that video. It was incredible. I had fun interviewing Lana and finding out what she's been doing, and the progress in just 12 months or 14 months. The progress is astonishing, and you can get the same kind of results, the same progress. What I want to do is, before we dive into those 3 challenges, I wanted to, yesterday I looked at that software, and 2 things. Number one, some of you said that it was a bit blurry on the screen, and I went away and did some investigating to figure out how to fix that. It's partly down to screen resolutions, but I think it's mainly at the zoom end. But anyway, we found a way of sorting that. But also we had lots of questions from people about, with the software, can you change things? Can you change the prices? Can you change the questions? So I want to spend about 5 or 6 minutes just showing you a couple of things that we didn't do yesterday. And I just need to just quickly change my screen share. Let me just find the right thing. Just bear with me a second. I thought I was already. I think I am. So hopefully, Sarah, you'll just confirm that you can see it. What I did yesterday was I showed you the process, the pricing conversation with the client. And I walked you through why you would ask scope questions. And I gave you some examples of scope questions, but also why you'd give choices, preference questions, like offering bill pay services, like how frequently they want the bookkeeping, and how we involve the client in that. We ask those questions, and then based on that, we then come up with and we give them a price. We have our 3 options. We walk through our 3 packages. And then the last thing that we do is, when the client wants to buy, the last thing we do is we reveal the price. And of course, if the price is too high, it's not a problem, because we just go back and revisit the questions and we change things. We involve the client in the process. We change the package if they need to. If they wanted weekly bookkeeping, you might want to ask them, well, do you really need weekly or do you want monthly? Because monthly will be cheaper. What do you prefer? What's the price if it's monthly? And then you can just change that setting and change the price immediately. And you just keep working with the client until they say yes. And I explained yesterday a little bit about the psychology and creating anchors and so on. I don't want to spend any more time on that because we've spent a lot of time yesterday. But what I do want to do is just show you a couple of things that, based on questions. Behind the scenes, there are so many things that you can change. So this is the client-facing thing. We can change so much including you can brand it with your company. I'll show you that in a short while. It'll be fun. But there's a whole bunch of things that you can do, including, and the main thing that you'll do is, when you go into what's called model management, you can create or change your pricing models. So this is behind the scenes. The client doesn't see this, but I've got a number of pricing models here, one of which is the bookkeeping one I went through yesterday. I'm just going to clone that for a second, just because I don't want to mess up the one that I've set up for demonstration purposes. So that's just been cloned as another identical copy. So as I go into the back end, we can do things like we can change the questions. So one of my questions, my primary scope factor was, how many sales invoices per month do you have? Well, we can edit that. We can change that question. It may be that you don't want to ask how many sales invoices. You want to ask how many transactions. And that's fine. You can change that. That's it. It's as quick as that. We've changed it. Also, there was a drop-down box for that particular question. And you could change this. It may be that you don't want to do 1 to 10 transactions. You want to change the bands, or you want to make it, rather it starts with 600. That's too expensive for you. We can change the price. So we can change, I'm just going to save. We can change all the numbers. You can create new questions really easily. Add a question, and you could ask any scope question you want, or any preference question that you want. It's pretty much unlimited what you can do. It's entirely up to you. This is why you can price any service, not just bookkeeping. Also, if I go into pricing parameters, this is where you can set up your 3 packages. And you saw the 3. You can actually have up to 5. And one of the settings that, so we've got here the essential, we've got the full, we've got the premium. And one of the things that I've set up is how to calculate the price of those. And remember, we talked about relative pricing, and I talked about how, as a general rule of thumb, as a starting point, a guideline, you might decide that your middle package is 30% more, 1.3 times, and your top one is 1.5. We set that here. So the entry level, or the bronze, is 1, and the next level is 1.3, the next is 1.5 times. But if you want to change that to double, if you want your premium to be double the price, then you just put a 2 in here. It's really, really easy to do. It's as simple as that. Or what you could do, it might be that what you've built into your premium is something that costs you a lot of money as well. And you want to make sure that's factored in. And so as well as multiplying by 2, we might add an amount on. We might multiply by 2 and add an extra $1,000 onto the price of the premium to reflect something valuable that you specifically put in. There are so many things that we can set. And I'm just scratching the surface and just want you to be made aware of what we can do. It might be, for example, that you don't even want 3 choices. It might be you don't want to offer them the premium. And so, or let's take the middle one out. Let's decide that we don't want to offer that. So we can hide that. And let me just save that. You can also, do you remember the ticks and crosses? You can add new things, change things. If you don't want to offer, for example, let's pick something. Let's take completing sales tax returns. If I edit that, if you're in the UK, you might want to change that to completion of VAT returns. I actually have a UK model with that already done for you, but if that's the case, you can reword it. And you might decide, I want to include that in the premium as well, or I don't want to include it in the premium. Whatever, you can change it around. You can build your packages really, really easily. So if I just quickly just show you that was the change I've made. If I go back and do a quote again, let's just pick a different client, and let me just quickly fast forward to that page with the prices. You will see that, oh, I didn't hit the save. I know, I forgot to save something, silly me. Yeah, I didn't save it. But what I wanted to show you was, what do I want to show you? I've lost my track. Oh yes, the other thing that people are asking, and Sarah got lots of questions yesterday, is, can I make it look like mine? And the answer is yes. So you can, in this section, you can change all the colors. If you can choose the currency that those prices are in dollars, by the way, but if you want, you can price in pounds, if you can price in euros, rand, whatever. There's different date formats, because American date format is different to UK date format. But most important, you may want to change your branding. You might want your logo, and you might want to change it to your colors. Let me just show you very quickly how you could do that, because actually what this also allows you to do, and some people in the Value Pricing Academy are doing this, is they are creating versions of the software to help their clients price. And then they're selling to their clients a consulting service, including some software to help them price. So imagine you had a client that was a firm of lawyers. Let me just log out for a second. And I always want this one here. Here's one I created earlier. So this is what you can do. You can completely change it with your logo, your colors. You can mix things around so it looks like it's your software. And also at a more advanced level, if you wanted to, this is actually a firm of lawyers that I deal with. And if I wanted to help them create models for pricing their legal contracts, whatever, I can do that. And it looks like it's their own software. So there's so many possibilities, so much flexibility. I just wanted to show you that just because we got so many questions yesterday. I do not want to turn today into a software day. I just wanted to make sure I answered a few questions. So let's move on, and let me just move on one more quick thing if I can pull this on. I also didn't show you this yesterday, but the software, if you want to know what that's going to cost, then it depends. The price depends upon what currency you are. But if you're in US dollars, the middle package, the full version of the software, will be $125 per month. However, at the moment, we have not got any immediate plans to make this software available to anyone other than members of the Academy. If you join the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy between now and Monday, or if you have already, you get complimentary, for as long as you're part of the Academy, you get the full version with that bookkeeping model built in. You do not have to buy it, and you get it immediately. So right now, Academy members get the software. And the reason for that is because we want to spend, the reason why we're not selling the software yet, and the reason why we're shutting down the Bookkeepers Academy on Monday, is because for the next few months, our focus is on helping Academy members master value pricing and also master using the software and having a system. So that's the only way that you can now get the software, is joining the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until we decide to put it out to others in a few months' time. And we don't know when. We're not in a rush to do that. When we do, you can see in US dollars what the prices will be. Okay, let's get started with the first of the challenges. And the first one I want to deal with today is this. So many times people say to me, one of the problems with pricing bookkeeping work is all those cheap competitors out there, the people with crazy low prices. Those people that put crazy low prices on their website, and the firm down the road that's pricing stupidly low. And yes, that's a big challenge. And we have to deal with that. But the thing is, and this doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you're a bookkeeper, an accountant, a legal firm, whether you're a firm of painter and decorators, whatever industry you are in, there's always going to be cheap idiots out there. People that don't understand pricing, people that think that if they're cheap, they'll win loads of business and make loads of money. And the reality is, when you are cheap and you charge too little, you can't be successful, with a few exceptions. I'm not going to go into pricing strategy right now. There is a strategy called low-cost leadership, where you can build a highly successful business by being the cheapest. However, to do that and be sustainably successful, there are some things you have to have in place. Not only that, only a small number of people in any marketplace can do that, typically 2 or 3 companies. If we think about, for example, the low-budget airline industry, in Europe, EasyJet and Ryanair follow that model and are extremely successful and have been for many, many years. There are many other low-budget airlines in the industry, many that have come and gone, because it's not sustainable. You can't have everybody being too cheap. There's things about the way that EasyJet and Ryanair have built their business model that makes it almost impossible for anybody else to come in and copy that model, because there's certain things that are in place. And for an accounting firm or a bookkeeping firm, we can't do those things, because we can't compete. Part of the things we have to have is scale, for example. The people that will win that game by making lots of money and offering cheap bookkeeping are going to be the technology companies. And as you know, last year, about nearly a year and a half ago, Intuit QuickBooks introduced their bookkeeping service. We also have things like BotKeeper. We have technology companies offering much, much cheaper, and you cannot compete with that. You cannot compete. And so it's a fact of life. There will always be somebody cheaper. The key, and this is the golden rule, if you're filling in the workbook, this is the golden rule. There will always be somebody cheaper. The golden rule is never, ever, ever compete on price. That's a loser's game. You will never win that game. You do not have in place, not a technology company, you do not have the things in place to win the game of low-cost leadership. You'll just find that if you are cheap, you find that you'll attract the wrong clients that bitch, moan, whinge, the pitter clients, as they often call it in Canada and the US, the pain in the ass clients. You'll attract the wrong people that moan, complain, don't value you, and you'll find that you'll struggle to make ends meet and you end up working crazy hard. Being cheap will not build a successful business. So we don't compete on price. Instead, What we do is we compete on value. What you have to do is compete on value. And that means partly it's about positioning. Your positioning is where you are in the marketplace, how you position yourself, the words on your website, the branding of what you do. You want to position yourself as being premium, as being an expert. And I don't want to get into marketing right now, but on Marketing Mondays in the academies, I teach positioning a lot. What the words to put on your website? What are the things you can do to position yourself as the expert? In fact, in a week on Monday, in Marketing Mondays for August, if you are joining me, we're going to be looking at the first of a two-part session where we're going to look at how to build a system for attracting people who are interested in working with you, for building your sales leads, if you like, your list of potential clients. And I'm going to share with you a process a week on Monday on how you can be seen as the expert and you'll attract better quality clients. It's all about positioning. The other thing that you want to do is focus on adding more value. Focus on doing more. We remember Tuesday, and it feels a long time ago now. Tuesday, we looked at the things that you wanted, the core three things with building packages. And one of those, a third of the things I looked at, number three was ask yourself the question, what more could I do? How could I help the client get a better result? How could I add more value to make my bookkeeping service more valuable? And I gave you some examples on Tuesday, the sorts of things that you could do. That's great for helping with packages and building a premium bookkeeping service, but also it helps with dealing with cheap competitors. You want to position yourself as being the best. You want to make sure that you go the extra mile. You do things and go above and beyond for the right types of clients. The sorts of clients that value a great bookkeeper or accountant, the sort of clients that want the books done right and they want help with building a better business, they will look for those people, those firms that position themselves as being better and do things that add more value. So you need to make sure you add value. And if we're value pricing, of course, the more value you add, the higher your prices can be. It's a win-win. And then the third part of it is, it's not just about adding value, but it's also about how do we communicate that value? What are the words that we use? How do we help our clients and our potential clients see us as not just being more valuable, but they understand that we're more valuable, that we are better than the firm down the road. So that's how we deal with cheap competitors. Do not compete on price. You will never win that game. And they won't win it either. I can guarantee the cheap firms down the road, they're working crazy hard and struggling just to make ends meet. You don't want to be in the same position as them. I know that means sometimes people, yes, but Mark, if I put my prices up, if I'm a premium provider, I might have less clients. So I said to you yesterday, just imagine this. What if you put your price up by 20%? And what if 1 in 5 customers go, which actually is almost never happens when you follow the right processes for doing that. But let's say you do. Price goes up 20%, 20% leave. You end up making exactly the same money in 4 days a week, not 5 days a week. Losing clients is not a bad thing. You don't want every client. You've got those pitter clients and they're holding you back. Yes, they might be adding to your top line, your revenue, your fees, but it's about bottom line and cash flow and your sanity and work-life balance. If you put your price up by 20% and you lose 20% of clients and now you have Fridays free, what could you do with 1 day a week to build a better business? You could spend a whole day planning your strategy, learning more about pricing, putting brochures in place, packages in place, starting to do some marketing to win the right kinds of clients. Sometimes we have to, I think a big problem in our profession, and this was me in 1998, 3 years into my accounting practice, I had 200 clients. I was working crazy hard. And I found that I was working so hard just to deal with the clients and just to make ends meet. And I found it really hard to find the time to do the things I knew I needed to do. I knew I needed to focus on things like getting my pricing right, my systems right, training my team better, putting the systems in place to do that, the systems to do the work more effectively. But I was too busy. I was on this treadmill of just working harder and harder and harder, trying to win more clients, hoping that the next client would be the one that suddenly I start making money and life becomes easier. And what I really found is every client I won, how's that, Sarah? Yep. I'm going to take it that was a yes. Okay, I think audio went for a second. I think we fixed it. I'm going to assume we have. Sarah will confirm it in a second. Sarah, have we fixed audio?
Yes, audio is fixed.
Perfect, thank you. No idea what went wrong. We had a small technical hitch yesterday and a little one today, but I'm back. Okay, so that's the first one. Second challenge then is really the big one for today. It's all about the words, the communication, because people say I'm seen as too low value. In fact, what I've got, let me just switch across for a second. These are some of the things that some of you said to me in the Facebook group when I asked you a little while back about what are your challenges. So Kylie said, I'd like to take a specific client and have you walk me through the steps it takes to get it. Actually, let me leave that one for now. Where was I? Yeah, sorry. Karenja was the one I'm looking for. The hardest part is pricing my worth and explaining why my value is worth what I charge. Having the confidence to do so, so to speak. Eve says, I don't know what I'm worth. Carol Wyckoff says, there is always such a gap between what is actually required to do a quality job and what the client thinks is necessary to have complete records. Linda said, figuring out pricing so I'm not leaving money on the table and communicating that it's not my time they're paying me for, but my experience and knowledge. And Kendra said, trying to explain to potential clients that bookkeeping is important and having them believe it. And so this is a challenge. We have to communicate better. And this is something that as a profession, we're generally pretty poor at. I know I was when I was running my accounting firm. I had no idea about the language, the words that we need to use and why they're so important. And so today I want to give you some strategies. I want to give you 3 ideas for better communicating value. Also, what I want to do is, one of the things that I'm a big fan of systems. Systems are critically important in any business. And you know that because accountants and bookkeepers are probably the most systematic people. We have systems for doing everything, almost. We have our tax return preparation checklists. In bookkeeping, we have systems. And when we use software like QuickBooks Online, there are systems built in. We have our systems for doing the bank reconciliation. We are very systematic in our thinking. It's the nature of accountants. It's the nature of bookkeepers. And yet, interestingly, the most important part of any business, if you want to make more money, the most powerful lever in the profit equation is price. And we know that. You can completely transform your results when you change your price. But my question is, well, how many pricing systems do you have in your firm? And most people have no pricing systems. And yet, if systems are so important and price is so important, why do you not have systems? Well, yesterday I showed you some systems for calculating price. Like, for example, the effective pricing software. Software is always a great system. It gives us a process for doing something. It's not just software though. Systems can be checklists, standard letters, standard forms. And when it comes to communicating our value, a system that you should have in place in your firm is some form of brochure. Why? Now, why should you have a brochure? And the reason for that is because, and let me just show you just some examples. When you have amazing brochures in your firms, what that does is a number of things. Firstly, when you have, and I'll show you some more screenshots in a bit. When you have professional looking brochures, it does a number of things. Number one, there's something called, that marketers sometimes call packaging. What that means is that when you package things up beautifully, it influences the customer's perception of the quality of what's inside. This is why Apple have extraordinary packaging for their products. It's beautiful, it's exquisite. Why do Apple spend so much money on packaging? Because they know it influences the perception of the quality of the product inside the box. And when the customer's perception of quality goes up, the customer expects
to pay a higher price, because we all have this association of quality and price are linked. You get what you pay for in this world. And so when we package things beautifully, we're going to create that expectation that the price is going to be higher than the firm down the road. And that's not a problem, because most people, the right clients, they want quality. They want the best. They want the best bookkeeper, the best accountant. Another reason for having a professional looking brochure is it demonstrates that you've done this before, that you're an expert in this case, bookkeeping. And so what happens is when people are looking to buy, they want to buy from the people who are the experts. We all want to work with the best. And so when you position yourself as an expert, they're more likely to buy from you. But the best reason, or the most important reason for a professional brochure, is it's also a system for you. Because when you're having the pricing conversation, one of the things you must do is, before we show the price, yesterday we looked at the pricing piece, but before we reveal the price, first we've got to build up the value. If the client doesn't understand the value, your price will always be seen as expensive. If someone says to you, you're expensive when you reveal your price, it's not because you're expensive, because you're not. I know that you are too cheap. You're too cheap. The reason why someone says that you're expensive is because they don't see the value. They don't understand the value. And that's our fault, because we've not built it up in the right way. So we have to become better at communicating in a consistent way, in a right way. And so a brochure helps us to do that. So I'm going to give you 3 things that you want to do in your pricing conversation when you're building up the value, 3 techniques to get you started. And what you should do is to create some form of written process, a system, so that it acts as your agenda for the meeting, for when you build up the value. It's your agenda, it's your aid memoir, it's your reminder what to say. And I'm going to flick backwards and forwards a few times between the screen, just to give you some examples. So the first thing that you want to do in the conversation when you are talking to your clients about bookkeeping, once you've identified, of course, that that's what they're interested in, when you talk about your bookkeeping service, always first start with talking about the pain. What's the pain that the client's going through right now that you will solve if you do their bookkeeping? What is the pain? Now, to some extent, to find that out, we have to ask questions. We want to ask questions to find out what are their problems, what's their challenges, what's keeping them awake at night. We want to uncover what are the problems they're facing right now. And it could be, for example, they've come to you because they were trying to do the bookkeeping themselves. They've only been in business for 2 years. They decided to save some money. They do the bookkeeping themselves. But as the business has grown, they found themselves working at the weekends doing their bookkeeping because they're busy. And they're now missing out on seeing their children on a Saturday morning because they're catching up with the books. That's pain. It might be they say to you, we're now finding that business is growing and we've got behind with the books. And we're now finding that we've got clients we know owe us money, but we don't know how much money because our sales ledger is not correct. We don't know what to send out in terms of statements. And so we're not collecting the money we want. It's giving us cash flow problems. Or it might be they say to you that because they're behind with the bookkeeping, the tax man's now on their back because they've not filed their tax returns, their sales tax returns, and that's why they're talking to you. There's a huge amount of pain that clients can be experiencing with bookkeeping. And so some of that pain we'll uncover by asking questions of the client. But also we want to make sure that we have a system for also talking about the typical things that we find from our experience are problems with bookkeeping, some of which the client might have told us, some things they've not yet. And so you want some scripts, and you might say things like, what we find is that from talking to our clients is everyone hates the bookkeeping. Unfortunately, of course, it has to be done. It's a legal requirement. It's a compliance requirement. It has to be done. But what we know from talking to our clients is that they hate doing it. And what tends to happen is because they want to do the more exciting things of running a business, they want to make things happen. They want to go and see potential new business. They want to launch new products. They want to grow their business. The bookkeeping and the paperwork is the last thing they want to do. And so what very often happens for business owners is they end up leaving it until the evenings or the weekends. And yet, aren't your weekends really there to be spent watching your children grow up, spending time with your family, playing golf on the golf course? What we're doing is we want to build up pain. And A brochure can include the scripts and the words and the language that you can use to build up that pain. Because if you think about it, what the client's buying from you is, they're not really buying bookkeeping. What they're interested in is what it will do for them. What will their life be like? What problems will you take away when you do it for them? And if it's things like that they're spending weekends doing the bookkeeping, and that means on Saturday morning they're missing their son play football or soccer, if you call it that, that's kind of priceless. You're giving that bit of their life back. You can't put a value on that, on the missing their children grow up. That's the value that you can bring because you're now doing the paperwork for them, the bookkeeping. It's not the hours you're spending, it's what they can do with that hours, what they can do by getting their life back. And what we have to do is become better articulating now. We have to build our scripts. We have to explain to them how their life will be better. What pain are we taking away? And so we partly do that by asking questions to uncover pain, and partly we make sure we have those scripts in our brochure so it's there as our aid memoir. Not that we read the brochure, it's there because as we go through it, it acts as our agenda. It reminds us what to say. So that's the first tip I want to share with you when it comes to communication. Start by focusing on pain. And the reason for that is because people are more motivated by avoiding pain than by the attainment of gain. We're all moving away from something. We all want to avoid some pain of some sort. Yes, we want to gain things as well, but it's the pain that really drives us more. It's not so much earning an extra $100,000. It's more being able to pay off our mortgage because of the pain and the stress of not knowing if we can meet mortgage repayments every month. That's the pain of not having the $100,000. It's the pain that wants us to take action and move. So we focus our conversations around the pain associated with the client's situation right now, because either they're doing the bookkeeping themselves or they have a bookkeeper that's not doing a great job. Okay, second idea. I call this one, don't wrap your Christmas presents in one box. And what I mean by this, just imagine Christmas time. Let's just fast forward for a minute to December. And I want you to think about for a second your most loved person in the world. It could be your spouse, your partner, a parent, a child, whoever that is. And think about that person and think about Christmas. I'm sure for that loved person, you buy a whole bunch of presents. So let me ask you this question. When it comes to December and you wrap those presents up, do you put all those presents into one big box, wrap that big box up and put it under the tree ready for Christmas Day? And the answer is no, of course you don't. You wrap each one separately. Each present is separately, individually wrapped and put under the tree. But my question would then be, why? Why do we do that? Why do we wrap the presents up individually? It's the same presents whether we put them in one box or wrap them separately. Of course, the reason for that is because when your loved one comes down at Christmas all excited and comes to the tree and they see all those boxes, their eyes light up because there's a perception of more value. If there was just one box under the tree, they'd be disappointed. Even though it's the same stuff. That's why we wrap our presents up separately. And we fall into this trap when we are talking about our services. We wrap everything into one box. So you might say something like this. We can do your bookkeeping. It's going to cost $500 a month. You'll almost certainly get the reaction, that's expensive. Because they don't see the value in bookkeeping. But when we think about it, bookkeeping is just a wrapper or a box for a whole bunch of stuff that we do. There are so many things that we do that's valuable to the client. And what we have to do is metaphorically, everything that you do, we have to individually wrap them up and communicate and build the value of each thing. So if instead you said to the client, one of the things we can do is your bookkeeping. Let me explain what that means. What we'll do is every single week we'll come in and we'll process your bank transactions, the income, the expenses. We then reconcile your bank account. And then what we do is we'll do the same thing with your credit cards. We'll process your sales invoices, your purchase invoices. We'll match them against payments so we can work out your debtors and creditors or accounts receivable, accounts payable, and so on and so forth. And then you say, and it's only $500 a month. Now the perception is very different, because as you're going through the list of what you do, in their mind they're thinking subconsciously, there's more to this than I thought. I didn't realize it was quite so complicated. I'm glad I'm having this conversation with this person that knows what they're talking about. I think I need this service. And so, again, another thing that we can do with our brochures is we can make sure that in there we list everything that we do. We itemize all the processes that we go through with our clients. So that's number two. Number one is we talk about pain first. Number two, we make sure we have a system to explain or show everything that we do. But there's one more thing we need to do, because whilst it's a great thing to say about, tell people about what we do, marketers teach us that people don't buy features, they buy benefits. And so when you say to the client, let me explain what we do as part of bookkeeping. One of the things we'll do is we'll process your banking, your bank payments, your bank receipts, and reconcile your bank every week or every month. It's great to say that, but the trouble is, a bank reconciliation, for example, is what a marketer would call a feature. Nobody buys a bank reconciliation. I can guarantee that if you say to a client, we do your bookkeeping, and one of the things we do every month is we will reconcile your bank account, and they will not say, wow, that's amazing. I've really wanted my bank reconciliation for so long. That's incredible. You'll never hear that, because they see no value in a bank reconciliation. They have no idea what it is. They're not trained bookkeepers or trained accountants. They don't know. It's a feature. People don't buy features, they buy benefits. So what you have to do with communication is you have to turn a feature into a benefit. You have to tell people what you do, but you have to tell them as well why you do it and why, and what is the benefit or the pain that it takes away. And you need to develop your scripts for doing that. You need to create the right words. Every time you tell the client about something you do, you also turn it into a benefit to them. So they can see, that makes sense. That sounds really valuable. I think I need that. And as you do that, you're building up the value in their mind. And as you do that, they're more likely to want to buy from you, and price becomes less of an issue. They're expecting a higher price now because they can see value in you. They can see quality because of the way that you're doing it. So one of the things that you need to do is create some form of brochure that you can use, a professional looking brochure, because that's the packaging that positions you as quality. That gives you your scripts, all the words and the language. If you decide to join the program, whether it's the How to Price Bookkeeping course or get it as part of the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, one of the things we do in one of the stages is we go really deep on communication, because this is so important. When you communicate better, when you have systems for doing that, you'll get much higher prices. And one of the things that we do in the training is I'm really into giving you the exact systems you need. Like the software, I give you the systems for building up the value. I've created brochures for you with all the words that you need. They look like what's on the screen, but also you get Word versions. So you can change the language if you want to, and then you can get them nicely designed and use them as a process for building up the value. I've had people say to me in the past that when they've got better at communicating, I've had many stories of people say to me, I've got double the price as last year, and I'm doing the same thing. And all I've done different is change my language. Now the client understands the benefit of what I do. Communication is so, so important. Okay, how are we doing for time? I think we're doing pretty good. So one of the things I'd love to know, again, in the chat box, is I haven't mentioned it so far, but I have yesterday and the day before, is I said to you there's two types of people that come to my webinars, my training sessions. There are the note takers that come and listen and take notes, which is great. But then there's the action takers, the people that go away and do something and implement straight away. And I know some of you are action takers because you told me in the Facebook group that you started designing your packages or whatever it might well be. So I just love to know, are you a note taker or an action taker? Let me know in the chat box while I just grab a quick bit of water, because my voice might end up 3 days in a row. I'm not sure how well the voice will stand up. Okay. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to look at the other of the challenges So I've given you some strategies now for communicating value. We're going to look next at how do we move our existing clients onto value pricing. I'll give you some thoughts around that. We're going to answer questions then. I said to you today, we're going to spend more time answering questions. But actually, we're going to do some questions right now, because some questions that you've been saying to me, either via the chat box in the last 2 days or via the Facebook group. Some of you have emailed Sarah direct with questions, and many of those questions are about Monday. What happens? What is the process? So here's some of the questions that I've had. Some people have said to me, so you've got two options. You can either enroll in the How to Price Bookkeeping course, if you want to, or you can enroll in the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy. I'll remind you in about a couple of minutes of the difference between the two. But also, Sarah's going to put in the chat box right now the link to the page that you want to go to. I'm not going to go through all the detail now, because you can click on that link. You've got till Monday. You can click on the link, and then you can look at the two different choices. If you look at there's all the information about what we're going to teach and what the resources are with the How to Price Bookkeeping course. If you're interested in the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy and you click through, there's a video where I explain what happens, and you'll see more information about that. So Sarah's going to put the link in the chat box, and so you can look at that in your own time, in your leisure. I will give you a quick compare and contrast the two options in a short while, but a few people have asked me these questions. So number one was, someone says, if I join the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, and I know right now it's only a small monthly investment of $156. Obviously, depends on what currency you're in. It's different for different currencies. But if you're in US dollars, it's $156 US. I know that's the price now, but it may go up in the future. And the answer to that is yes, it will go up in the future. We review our prices every single year. They go up all the time. However, this is what we do, and we've always done it this way. We started the Value Pricing Academy in 2014. People who joined in 2014 have never seen the price change. The price you join this week is the price it will always be for you. You lock it in, okay? You lock it in. If you're thinking, I might wait 6 months till I open up some more places, because it'll be closed on Monday for 6 months. If you come back in 6 months, the price will have gone up. I can promise that. But if you join now, the price you pay is locked for you, okay? That's the first question I got. Does the price change? Not for you, it doesn't. It's the price you start at is the price it will stay. Another question people have said is, Mark, can I change my mind? What if I do change my mind? How long do I have to be part of the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy? And the answer to that is, you're in control. You can cancel at any time you like. When you're in the academy, and I think we even have a video to show you this. There's a settings. You get a little avatar, an icon right in the top right where you can put your picture if you want. You click on there. You pick the settings, your account, and there's a big red button that says cancel. And that's all you have to do. Just hit the button, cancel any time you like. I've had people with me since 2014 when I started, but some people, their circumstances change. You're in control. You stop whenever you want. Of course, when you leave the academy, obviously you don't get access to the resources and the training. You get everything for the duration of your membership. But also as well, and I mentioned this yesterday, I do have a guarantee in place that whichever of the two routes you take, whether you decide to go for just the How to Price Bookkeeping or to join the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, you have 30 days. That if any time in 30 days you're thinking, actually, this isn't what I'm expecting, it's not valuable, not only can you press the big red button and stop, but in the first 30 days, you can ask for your money back as well. So you've got nothing to lose. It's not going to cost you a single penny, because at the end of 30 days, you either get every penny back and you get to keep all the knowledge you've learned over 30 days, or you find this is hugely valuable and therefore you're already up on the deal. Okay. That was the next question. Another question people keep saying, I think I've answered it, but when do I get the software? Well, you only now get the software if you join the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy. You will not get the software as part of the How to Price Bookkeeping course. It's part of the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy. And you get the software as soon as you join. If you join today, you can go into the platform and you'll see a video I've done that says how to register your copy of Effective Pricing. You can do that now. Next question is, what if I miss live sessions? What happens if I can't make in the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy particularly? What if I can't make the live sessions? And I also got a question in Facebook just, I think, overnight from a lady over in Australia, because in Australia it's roughly midnight when we run the live sessions. So just so you know, most of the people I work with range from over in the US and Canada, the UK and South Africa is the majority of people I work with, Ireland. And so all my live sessions are run at this time. That's 4 o'clock UK time. We start all live sessions at 4 o'clock UK time. That's 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's 8 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. Because this time of day works for the most number of people. So I apologize if you're in New Zealand, Australia, Tasmania. I have some people following me in those countries, but I apologize about time zones. There's not much I can do about it. I have to make it work for as many people as possible. But if you can't make live sessions, so if you're in Australia, you still get the resources, video training, and so on. And if you can't make live sessions anyway, they're always recorded. In the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, every monthly live training is recorded, and the recording, the resources are all made available to you for up to 60 days. And that means that if you join today, you don't have to wait till the August sessions. You can catch up on the July training that you've just missed. That's available now today. Have I got any other questions? Yes, someone said, what if I have more questions, Mark? Okay, well, if you've got questions, then if you join the Academy, you also get a Facebook group. There's the big Facebook group you're probably all in, but there's a special one for the Academy members. And if you've got questions, ask me questions there, and I will go deep with answers. I often do videos, for example, to answer specific questions for people, because my goal is to help people be successful. I want all my Academy members to be successful. And so that's why we spend time on the monthly sessions with questions, and also via the Facebook group. And also you're part of a great community. So you will be part of a community with some other amazing people like Teresa, like I mentioned a lot, who are here to help you, and they will answer questions too. Okay, last thing someone said to me, what's the difference between Value Pricing Academy and the Bookkeeping Pricing Academy? Well, the Value Pricing Academy is closed right now, so you can't join it. That's really at the next level. It's more aimed at the slightly larger firm, more the accountants. We go beyond bookkeeping. We look at things like business advisory services, how to profit from business advisory. We're going to be opening up some places at the end of October for that. So I know some people have already said to me that the advisory sounds just what they want. Well, good news is if you can wait 3 months, we're going to run a session like this called the Business Advisory Masterclass, end of October, and you'll have the opportunity, we'll open up for a few days the chance to have access to the Value Pricing Academy. Now, of course, if that's you, if you're interested in that, there's no reason why you can't start with the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, because you get access to some of the sessions anyway, and then you can upgrade. It's really easy to upgrade. Let me summarize. It's completely flexible. You can join the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy and upgrade. There's 2 opportunities a year to upgrade to the Value Pricing Academy. Or you could go the other way. If it's not working for you, stop whenever you want. You're in complete control. We make it easy and flexible. And the final thing I want to just walk through before we get into the next part is just very quickly, let me remind you of the 2 options and which is best. In US dollars, and it depends on your currency, they're all different. You can check it out on the page. But if you go for the How to Price Bookkeeping, it's 6 small payments of $156. If it's the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, it's still $156. The only difference there is that it's for as long as you get value. Enrollment for both closes, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Monday. That's your last chance. We close the doors because we go live with the training. And you get the training whichever route you go down. If you join the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, you still are on the same training course, okay? So at that point, everything's the same. But if you join the Academy, you get access to my live Marketing Mondays. Once a month, we get together, I teach you marketing, and the next 2 months are particularly exciting, where I help you build a system for building up your leads, building your list. We have Foundation Wednesday, where once a month I go deep on a particular area of value pricing. I might look at, for example, we might spend 90 minutes on menu pricing, which we spent, I think, about 20 minutes on that on Tuesday. We go deep into foundational topics. And you also get access to Teresa, who's awesome, doing amazing things. She teaches you the systems you need to build a great firm. and she shares her extraordinary story. And of course, you get the full version of the effective pricing software as part of your subscription. And remember, normally you would pay $125 per month for that. But if you're an Academy member, you get it now, and you get it for free for the duration of your Academy membership, for as long as you want. And of course, remember, the guarantee is if at any time in the first 30 days, whichever route you take, if any time in the first 30 days, you're not happy with the training, email Sarah, ask for your money back. It's as simple as that. You don't have to tell me. I don't get to find out. Sarah deals with all of that. Okay. I want to have as well, we still have one bonus left if you decide today. If you're ready to take action today, we will send you, first thing in the morning tomorrow, we'll send you the 94-page research report on how you can price your cloud accounting setup. The other bonuses have gone, I'm sorry, but this one is if you decide today. So today for the bonus, and then we close things down on Monday. I shared this story from the chat box on Tuesday. Carla Newman posted on Tuesday, and she said, with Listen to Market for the past year, I moved a client from 36,000 to 106,000 a year without any pushback. All about confidence, listening to the pain points, and communicating value. And so my question for you is, can you get that sort of result? Absolutely you can. And I'm going to give you all the training and the systems and everything you do to get those sorts of results. Is that worth investing just $156 a month to get those sorts of results? I'll leave that for you to decide. My goal is to do everything in my power to help you be successful. Okay, let's move on to the final challenge, and then let's answer questions. So the final challenge was, how do we move our existing clients on to value pricing? And so some thoughts on that. The first thought I've got for you is, your clients really want to move to value pricing, because the thing about hourly is people hate it. We looked at that on Tuesday. Customers hate not knowing what the price is up front. I hate it when lawyers do it to me, when they don't give me a definite price. It's vague. It's going to be this much per hour. I absolutely hate it. There was some research done back in 2005 in the UK by Sage, the software company, and they interviewed, I think it was certainly tens, if not hundreds of thousands of business owners. And one of the interesting questions was, what's the thing you hate the most about your accountant? What's the thing you hate the most about your accountant? And the number one answer was this: surprise bills. Surprise bills. Everyone hates surprise bills. They want to know upfront what the price is going to be. And so one of the things about value pricing is we usually give a price up front. Okay. Now, I did say that fixed pricing and value pricing aren't the same thing, but a characteristic of value pricing is we will give a value-based fixed price up front. So clients want that. And so it's the way you communicate it. If you have been on hourly before, you want to make sure it comes back to words, language, and explaining to the client that you've now changed. Good news, you've changed the way that you've priced. You've been listening to what your clients have said. They hate the way that the profession charges pricing based on the hour, because they don't know what the price is going to be up front. They can't plan, they can't budget. So what we've done, we've listened to our clients, and we now give you a fixed price right up front. That means you can plan, you can budget. When you use the right words, the right language, then people love the fact you're on value pricing. I think the real issue is not so much how do I move my clients to value pricing, but how do I put my prices up, I think, is more the real question, of which when you move to value pricing, you will want to also put your prices up. So let's give some thoughts around that. One of the things you want to do, wherever possible, is meet with the client, because you want to involve the client in the pricing process. And yesterday we looked at that in detail. That process of using software or Excel, involving the client in the pricing process, is just as powerful for repricing your existing clients as it is for brand new clients. So wherever possible, try to meet your client and have a price conversation. Of course, I know for some people, and perhaps many, that can be challenging, because sometimes we have too many clients. If you have 100 clients or more in your firm right now, that would mean arranging 100 pricing conversations. And we are already maxed out as it is. We don't have the time. How do we find the time for 100 pricing conversations? That's challenging. So my advice in that situation is just take it one client at a time. But if you want to get some quick results, then one of the things you could do is you could still use a written form of communication. But there is a way that you do it. The words that you use, the order that you put things in can make a real big difference. One of the things that Teresa did that got her huge results in her bookkeeping firm, and many other people I work with, I teach them called the contract renewal letter process, which is a fast way to reprice your clients. It's a structured way that you communicate, a bit like the brochure. There's an order to which you say things to build up the value so that price becomes much, much smaller. And so pricing in front of the client is always going to be better. But if you've got loads of clients, there are some fast ways that you can do it. I think in Teresa's case, she told me she did, and she's doing a training session. I think there's a recording of last month's session in the Bookkeeping Pricing Academy where she shared her process of what she did. And I think she said she increased her average price by either 20 or 25% with, it was either little or no loss of clients. She completely transformed her firm. Her story is actually fascinating what she's done, because they were really struggling. It's Teresa and her sister Connie. They run the business, and they made all sorts of mistakes to start with, like we all do. And I think they were close to thinking about closing the business. And then they joined the Value Pricing Academy. I think it was 3 years ago. And there's no doubt Teresa was one of these action takers, because she did things immediately. There was no kind of thinking about, oh, should I do what Mark says or should I change it? She just did it. She followed the framework. And her practice is so different today than what it was back then. And you'll get to meet Teresa. She's extraordinary. She's over in Canada, and she teaches on my sessions. She's in the Facebook group a lot, contributing as well. She's a very kind, wonderful, sharing individual, doing amazing things and also wanting to help the profession get better. Okay, next idea for you: repricing your existing clients, moving them across. Another thing that works really, really well when you reprice your clients is what we talked about on Tuesday. Menu pricing. Menu pricing is great. It's a great strategy as well, creating different packages. Because if before you are on hourly, that probably means that if it was hourly, it was one thing. It was your bookkeeping for $50 a month. Okay, we're not doing bookkeeping anymore. We now have our bronze, silver, gold. And here's the strategy that you might want to think about when you come to pricing your bookkeeping. What I recommend you do is a great place to start is if you've got a, let's say a client you want to reprice, they were paying you $2,000 last year, $2,000, £2,000, whatever it was, $2,000 last year. You want to get, let's say you want a 20% higher price. Then what you do is you make your entry level, your bronze bookkeeping for that client, a package that's a similar price. It could be the same, it could be 2,000. Or it could be plus inflation, 5% higher. I would go with that. It could be 2,100, for example. But also what you do, remember what we said on Tuesday, look at what you did for that client and ask yourself the question, what things in there are not 100% essential? I'm selling them a Rolls Royce for the price of a Mini. Take some things out. Then you have a middle package. And if you want a 20% higher price, make that 1.2 times, or you might go to the 1.3. It's up to you, but perhaps 20% higher. So 2,400. Then you have a premium one. And the premium wants to be higher still, with all sorts of other wonderful things in there. And in this particular case, you might want to make that much, much higher. There's a reason for that. I'll go in sometime, called anchoring. But what will happen when you present the client with the prices, the worst that can happen is, because people are scared about putting their price up with existing clients. They're scared because they think they might lose the client. Well, if we give them a choice of options and the entry level, okay, we might do less stuff, but at least the client can get something for the same price or a similar price to last year, then it's unlikely you will lose the client. The worst case scenario is they still pay you 2,000 or 2,000 plus a bit for inflation, and you have a bit less work to do. But what you'll find, and there's a lot of evidence and around this, is as long as you build up the value in the right way of the extra things that are in the middle package, many of them will choose the middle package. Not all, but many will. And if that's 20% higher, that means many will choose to pay you 20% more. And you will also find that some will choose the top package. And so that's a great way of repricing your existing clients, because it's not a very scary way, because you're still giving them the chance, the opportunity, the choice to pay you a similar amount to last year. So that's the second idea. And the final idea is, if you're repricing your clients, if you want to put your prices up, then one of the things that really helps is to give advance notice. The more notice that you give, the more it softens the pain. And there's some psychology around this, and studies been done by price psychologists. But essentially, in a nutshell, if the price goes up today, we feel the pain immediately. If we have to pay more money for something today, we feel that pain. It's more painful. But if someone tells us that the price is going up, but not for 3 more months, because that's a later date into the future, we don't feel the pain quite so much. And so one of the ways to soften the blow is to give some advance notice. And of course, one of the things we've got right now is COVID-19. We're in interesting times. Many businesses are struggling right now. And I've had lots of people ask me questions. Should we reduce our prices, or should we not change our prices because of the situation? And my answer is, we're value pricing. Now more than ever before, you've got opportunities to add more value, helping clients secure funding and so on to help them get through these tough times. You can add more value now than before. But if you do that, you can and should charge higher prices because you're creating more value. But what you can do is do things like, you could say to the client, we're revisiting our prices and we need to put our prices up. We've not changed them for 12 months, in your case, could be 5 years. We've not changed our prices. We're reviewing our prices. We're also reviewing what we do for clients. We are reviewing the way that we deliver things to add more value to our clients. We've been listening to feedback, and we're going to be putting our prices up. Typically, they might go up by 20%. However, so in your case, you currently pay us $200 a month. That could be about $250 a month. However, what we're going to do is we're going to let you have access to some of the new things we're doing, and we'll let you carry on at the existing price, and we won't change the price. And you could use the current, because of the situation we have right now, we don't want to give you any shocks, surprises because of the difficulty with COVID-19. What we're going to do is we're going to leave the price rise for you for 2 months. It'll start 1st of October. So nothing changes right now. We'll just do more for you, but just so you know, 1st of October, the price changes. That has a huge impact. It softens the blow. And what happens is that person is unlikely to leave because A, they value you, they work with you. B, the price isn't changing now, and you might do some more stuff. And they probably need you more than ever right now. But also what happens, you see, is you've now managed their expectations. They now know that the price will go up. And they might not like that. But over the next 2 months, you've got time to build a relationship, to keep adding more value. And when 2 months comes round, they will go through a phase of initially perhaps some shock straight away. But as the 2 months unfolds, they're accepting it's fine. They're used to it. They'd rather it didn't go up. We all don't want price rises, but they're accepting it. So give people advance notice if you're worried about the reaction that you might get. Okay, I think we are ready for questions, Sarah. So I'm going to spend the rest of our time today answering as many questions as I possibly can. Where should we start?
Okay, so Jean says, assuming we are able to come up with 3 packages, would it make sense to post them on the bookkeeper's website? If we do we need to describe what is included in each package? And just so you know, she says she's personally posted on her website, but only includes some of the generic features of the packages.
Okay, if I've understood that question right, it's essentially, should we put our prices and packages on the website? And the answer to that is, with prices, no. Do not put prices on a website. I'm finding it a worrying trend in this profession. Increasingly, people putting price on a website, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why not. But essentially, I would ask you to think about this. If you're going to put price on your website, are you going to put really high prices on there to create a positioning of quality, etc., or are you going to put low prices because you want to attract clients? And I can almost guarantee that everyone's putting low prices because they want to use it to attract clients. Because if you put high prices, your worry is that nobody will ever call you. Nobody will go to the contact us button because you'll price yourself too high. So most people put low prices on their website. And the problem with that is, number one, 3 problems. Number one, you attract the wrong types of clients. The people that just want a cheap accountant or a cheap bookkeeper, they're the people that are surfing these websites looking for prices, and they're looking for the cheapest. And if you're the cheapest, you will get those clients. They are not good clients. Secondly, you'll actually miss out on the good clients. And the reason for this is that there are businesses out there, more than you think, who value what you do, or at least they would if they understood what you did and if you added some more value and helped them in the way they want. And those great businesses, the businesses that are run by successful entrepreneurs, by ambitious people, they know that they get what they pay for. And they don't want a cheap accountant, because cheap implies low quality. They want quality. The best businesses want the best accountants, the best bookkeepers. And if your prices are low, that will position you as being cheap, and they won't even bother ringing you. They can afford you, but they don't want you. They want someone good. And the third problem is it creates what's called an anchor. What happens is that price means that if you then have a meeting with them and you try to then get a higher price, you've put that anchor in their mind that's going to make it much harder to get the price that you want. And sometimes people say to me, oh, I can get around that. Can I just put prices from? No, because that prices from, they're going to still take that number as the anchor and expect that, even though you're thinking you've covered yourself because you'll get a higher price. Do not put price on a website. The purpose of your website, from a growth point of view, you might use it as a member-only area and stuff, but in terms of a marketing tool, the purpose of your website is to get people, the right customer, to see you as being better than everybody else, and you want to give them a compelling reason to contact you, to have a meeting with them, whether it's online or physical. It's when you have the meeting with them, that's when you talk about what you do, build up the value. Now, the second part of the question you said, though, was, should I put my packages on there? And I have no problem with that. I have no problem with putting your packages on there. However, I've seen most people who do it in an awful way. One of the mistakes I see being made is having too much detail. If your packages have huge amounts of stuff, that's actually harmful. It's because there's a couple of concepts like the paradox of choice. When there's too much stuff, it's too confusing, it's too complicated, it's easier not to decide. We confuse people. Now, when you've got a brochure with lots of details, remember what I said about don't wrap your Christmas presents in one box. You want to tell them everything you do. That's fine in a meeting, because in a meeting, you're in control of the process. And different clients want different degrees of detail. Some clients want the detail because they're detailed people. Some want you to just cut to the chase. And when you're in a meeting with a client, you can tailor your conversation to exactly that. And if you've got a brochure, you can go through to the pages that cut to the chase for some clients. For others, you can go through every single page. But on a website, if you have too much information, it can put people off. And so if you're going to put your packages on a website, I think what's more important is, rather than all the detail, is describing more who is this package aimed at and what's the big benefit of it. Think back to the customer segmentation we talked about on Tuesday. Okay, so that was a long answer, and I know we've got loads of questions, Sarah, so let me move on to the next one.
Okay, so from an anonymous attendee, at which stage do we show the brochures, assuming we build the price and value in front of them via Zoom?
Okay, that's a great question. So I've not covered it in this week, but I teach something called the 3 stages of the value conversation, the 3 stages of the value conversation. We do things in a certain order. Stage 1 is what I call uncover the value. That means we want to understand better what's the pain the client's going through, what do they want out of life, what's their goals, what are their dreams. And we do that by asking questions. And there's a process for doing it, but essentially we want to ask questions. We want to uncover value. We're doing a fact find because we need to understand the client better before we can present them with a solution. Stage 2 is then what I call build the value. Build the value is where we then create the packages that are just right for the client, and then we use communication skills like the brochure, for example, techniques, systems to build up the value in their mind. Now, with a brand new client or a big project, it's often a good idea to treat the uncover the value in one separate meeting and then meet a few days later for the second meeting, because that gives you time to then think about and work out what specific things would help that client and meet their specific needs. Stage 3 is then capture the value. And what that means is that now we capture the value that we've created and built in our price. We value price. And so thinking about your meeting, and it may be just a single meeting, but you want to ask questions first. You want to discover things. You want to learn things. You ask questions first. Then when you've now understood the client and what they want, you then build the value of your solution. If what you've uncovered is they want somebody to do the bookkeeping and you've uncovered the pain and what they want their life to look like, then you use, for example, a brochure to guide you through the process of building up the value, talking about your different packages and helping the client decide which is the right one for them. By the end of stage 2, your goal is for the client to say which package they want. Oh, this sounds awesome. This is exactly what I want. I want the premium package. Once they've done that, and only once they've done that, once they say they want to buy, then you move on to the price. So that's when you'd open up the software. You'd ask the scope questions, which you might already have found already. Or you may just want to pick up on those and ask a few extra things. Do you want weekly or monthly bookkeeping? How frequently? The software comes last. The reason why, just so you know, the reason I did the software bit yesterday and the communication today is because I know that the most of all the challenges, how to come up with the price is the one I get most often. It's also the hardest one to answer. And so I didn't want to make the last day too difficult for you. We did that one yesterday because I know that that's something that's really important to you. But today's stuff on communication, we have to communicate the value and then we talk about price. We only talk about price when the client understands the value and they are ready to buy. Sarah, what's the next question?
Okay, so Bev says, with existing clients, would you still use a brochure? They should already know the value that you provide, so do you use an abbreviated brochure?
Bev, great question. Firstly, yes, you do use the brochure, but you could use an abbreviated one. If you decide to join the academy, what I do for you is actually create 3 different versions, ranging from a full one, which is about, I don't know, 25, 30 pages, to a 1-page version. And you can choose whichever one you feel is most appropriate for the meeting. And so for an existing client, the 1-page one going through the different options might be sufficient. However, never assume your clients know what you do. Never assume they know what you do. You might think, of course they do. I've done bookkeeping for the last 5 years for them. They know what I do. No, they don't. They haven't got a clue. They know roughly what you do, but they're not sat with you. They don't know all the processes you run through. They just know that they give you their books every now and then, and at some point you come back and say, yeah, it's done. They don't know what you do. I can give you an analogy. When I was in practice many years ago, I came from a tax background, and I think I said the other day, I used to do a lot of incorporations, giving tax, where for tax reasons and other reasons it would be better to move from a sole trader to a corporate. And every time I met with a prospective client who was either a partnership or a sole proprietor and was making reasonable profits, I would go through my script of explaining the benefits of incorporating. And so many times I got the response, wow, my accountant's never told me this before. And I was thinking, this is kind of tax planning 101. And all the accountants in Sheffield, UK, incompetent? Because I was getting it every time someone said, my accountant's never told me this. They must have done. What probably happened is they probably have told them, but they told them 3 years ago. And they don't remind them every year that this is something beneficial. And when you tell people with something tangible like a brochure or software, people remember it. Whereas if you just have a meeting with the client and you've got 20 things on your agenda, one of which is, have you thought about incorporating or not this year? They then forget about that conversation until someone else comes along and then has a nice brochure, software, and they now think, wow, this is different. So never assume your existing clients know what you do, because they probably don't. Next question, Sarah. if it's okay, I'm going to sit down for a bit because it's hard work.
The train going past in the background, sorry. So Jerry says, how do you use the software to provide a menu with bookkeeping, payroll, tax planning and tax preparation?
Oh, Jerry, that's a really interesting question. Okay, we touched on it, I think, on Tuesday, but we'd not looked at the software back then. So someone asked the question on Tuesday with packages. I think they said, should we build in payroll into bookkeeping? And I said, we're talking about, you could either think of things as options, build them into a package, upsell and cross-sell. It's some advanced stuff, which I'll go into another day. But essentially, from the software point of view, you can price anything that you want. And let's just take to the bookkeeping and the payroll. So you could, do you remember when I showed you perhaps not from today because I rushed it, but yesterday with a software demo, I went through the questions, and one of the questions was, would you like us to do bill pay services, yes or no? In the same way, you could ask in your bookkeeping model, would you like us to do your payroll, yes or no? And you could do that. But then you'd have to ask some scope questions because there's different scope questions. Oh, how many employees have you got? Are they weekly? Are they monthly? And you can do that. It makes your pricing model a little bit complicated, but you can do it. You certainly can. However, I recommend that for the main types of services, the different services, so bookkeeping, payroll, business advisory, tax returns, you are better off pricing them separately because they're all significant services, and you will get a better price if you build up the value separately. So what I would do is, if the client's interested in those four things, bookkeeping, payroll, business advisory and tax returns, I'd open up my 4 brochures. I'd have a brochure for bookkeeping, one for payroll, and I'd say to the client, which one do you want to start with first? Which we look at first? I think the bookkeeping is the most pressing. Okay, let's look at bookkeeping. I'd go through the bookkeeping, I'd give a price. At the end of it, when you agree the price, write it down and then say, okay, which is the second most important to you? I need the payroll sorting. Okay, let's do the payroll. Do the same thing. Build up the value of payroll, involve the client in the pricing process, come up with the price. And then by then you might, sometimes people say, yeah, but Mark, the meeting would go on for a day. You do not want to rush the pricing conversation because this could cost you thousands in lost profit if you rush it and get half the price you could have got. If you get a $3,000 price and they might have got 10 grand, if you'd have just done the job properly, you should never rush the pricing conversation. And so if the client says, I want those other 2, but I'm kind of running out of time now. Well, look, should we start with the bookkeeping and the payroll? And why don't we put a date in the calendar right now? And we can do it next week or next month. You decide, and we can talk about advisory, we can talk about tax returns. But I know you said your bookkeeping and payroll is most pressing. Why don't we start there? And then we'll get together very soon. It's fine to do it that way. Better to do the job properly than to cram it all together and rush it. So I hope that makes sense and helps with that particular question. As far as the software is concerned, you can create different models for each of those different services and you do each one separately. That's the best way. Sarah, what's next?
So Dimitar says, how would you approach with clients that want an all-inclusive package?
Dimitar, that's fine. That's fine. But if all-inclusive means all those things, let's say, they want the bookkeeping, they want the payroll, they want the tax returns, and they want business advisory, then this is a client that clearly is ambitious, if they want all-inclusive, they've probably got the money to invest, they want this thing. It's going to be a big price. If you want those 4 things, it's probably going to be 5 figures and upwards, 10 grand, 20 grand a year. And so what we do is we certainly have a 2-meeting approach minimum. We want to have a meeting to have the fact find, to really understand what they want, because they want a lot of stuff. So we need to understand their challenges, their pain, their goals, and so on. Then we have another meeting where what we can then do is think through what's the best approach. And what we can then do is create a complete set of packages based on what they've said they want. And we can start to, for a big project, brochures are really powerful. Brochures are great because they save you a load of time. There's a new one, Sarah. They save you a load of time for your standard services. So bookkeeping, having a brochure with packages means that you've got a system that makes it much easier every single time. But sometimes clients want things that are different. They want something different that you don't normally do, or they want a whole mix of different things. And so sometimes we have to treat it as what I call a one-off project. And so for that, where the client gets an all-inclusive set of packages that specifically meet their needs. And so for that, in that case, the brochures will help, but much better to create something specific for them, which is why we need to first have the fact find as a separate meeting to uncover the value. And then 3 or 4 days later, we get back to them again. And what I would do is I would create a proposal that's of the same quality as a brochure, professional looking, a draft proposal, and the proposal becomes your agenda for the meeting. But unlike the brochure, it's specific to that client's specific set of needs, with still with different options, but where those options will include all the things they want to various degrees to meet their specific issues. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of advanced stuff that I teach that as advanced in the Value Pricing Academy, how to do one-off proposals and stuff like that for big projects. But that's it's a similar approach. We just do on a bigger scale. So thank you, Dimitri, for that question. Sarah, what's next?
Okay, so David says, I get and take calls from people asking almost immediately for a price. How would you recommend I handle that?
Right, you need a script, you need a system. Scripts are systems, by the way. When systems are so important in any business, systems are things like standard letters, standard forms, software. And one of the most overlooked systems is the script, the words that you say. The most successful businesses have amazing scripts. McDonald's, would you like to go large? That little simple script makes them millions of dollars. You want a script. If you get that question regularly, you want to script it. Not to say exactly the same every time, but to thought through the answers. So you would say something like this. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. We often get that question asked up front. The thing is, what we found is that every client is different. Every client has unique needs. Every client is different and wants something specific. And so what we do at our firm is we make sure the solution that we give you is just right for your business. Otherwise, there's a danger that we might sell you something that's not right for you. And so we need to better understand what it is that you want. What's your problems right now? Where do you want to get to in life, in your business? What's your ambitions? We need to understand that first. And then what we do is we create a series of options and choices that specifically meet your needs. That's why we need to have a meeting. And when we have that meeting, we can then talk about price. Okay, it's just a script. You just want to have some way of explaining why you can't give a price straight away, because you absolutely must not have a price. If they insist on the price, they are not the right customer. They're only interested in the cheapest. It's okay to say no. Sarah, next question.
Okay, so another anonymous attendee says, in the academies, are there videos of role-playing the conversations for presenting value, packages and price?
Interesting question. No, but I've done a few little role plays in this session with scripts and words. Just now was kind of a role play, the words that I would say. And I do that very often in the live sessions because all the different challenges that you have, I have resources. I've come across every one of these things and I've got these scripts, which is why if you were thinking, how did Mark come up with that many? Because people have asked that question in the academies before. I teach people, one of the sessions I teach is how do you pre-qualify clients and make sure you only meet with the right clients. And of course, one of the issues is clients wanting to know the price right up front. And so what I've done is I've developed all these scripts over the year. I've been teaching for 20 years. I have all these scripts for how you deal with these different situations. And when we teach the various topics in the academies, then yes, I will sometimes verbalize these scripts and you'll then get them as part of the resources. I don't do specific videos because we focus on doing things live in the academy. I prefer live because it means I can answer questions afterwards. Okay, next one, Sarah.
Okay, so another anonymous says, to save money, a client wants to do more of the monthly bookkeeping themselves. Is it worth offering a monthly or quarterly review of the books as a set price than charging on top of the set price if clean-up work is required?
No reason why not. So if I've answered that right, it's rather than you doing a full bookkeeping service, it's more of a review of what they do. And that's perfectly fine. You can have a service that does that. You can even build it into the software. I think one of my students, Jan Bodar in Sedona in the US, she's been with me for ages now, lovely lady. She's a bookkeeper, runs it with her husband, Michael. And I think she did last December a training session, because she's doing amazing things. She did a training session for Academy members on how she is pricing bookkeeping using the software. It's actually the previous version of software. And if I remember right, she has created a service for those people that she meets that don't actually want to invest in full bookkeeping. They want to do it themselves, but they want a review of it. And you absolutely can do it. It's something you can offer. If you want to offer it, of course, it's up to you. And how do you do that? You just follow all the things I teach you, the frameworks. You give them 3 choices. You can build it into software. You could build a brochure. There are all these different things you can apply to all these different services. I hope I answered that question right. I don't know, sometimes I go off on a tangent and ramble a bit, but hopefully that answered your question. So what's next?
As a new startup, what would be the criteria for developing package pricing?
As a startup, so you're a startup, I'm guessing you're just starting your, I'm assuming that's you as a startup rather than your client starting up. I'm going to assume it's the former. If you're starting up yourself, how do you create your packages? Well, I'm assuming that just even though you're a starter, you've done training in bookkeeping or accounting, and you know what the various things are that you deliver. So initially your packages, if you do it yourself, if you join the training, I'll give you packages. But if you do it yourself, go through the process I told you on Tuesday. You can go revisit the recording between now and Monday, and create some packages based on your judgments, based on your best guess. When you create your packages, whatever packages you create, do not expect them to be the same packages in 10 years from now. You will evolve and change things. What I would suggest is that create your packages. Don't spend a lot of money creating a professional 30-page brochure. Have a one-page sheet of one-page sheet. Make it a nice PDF with the packages. And then for the next 2 or 3 months, see how the conversations go. And you might find that you'll learn stuff in the conversations once you go live, because sometimes you'll find nobody goes for the middle option. And it might be because nobody values this and this. Or you might find that people are saying to you, this is great, but I also want this. Could you do this? And you might start thinking, okay, I'm asked for that a lot. I want to build that into my middle package because that'll get more people buying the middle one. So your packages will evolve based on your experience, your learning. So, and if you're a startup starting your firm right now, we've all got to start somewhere. And sometimes in the first few months of a new business, it's a little bit of a trial and error. You're going to make mistakes, not as many as me, hopefully. You'll make mistakes. Mistakes are nothing to be ashamed of. I make mistakes all the time. Mistakes are nothing to be ashamed of. What we should be ashamed of is not learning from our mistakes and just repeating the mistakes of the past and hoping something different will change. Billing based on the hour and everyone says we're too expensive, and then just carrying on doing the same thing, hoping things will change. That's unforgivable. But we will make mistakes. We just have to learn from it. Anyway, what's the next one, Sarah?
Kim says, with value pricing, how do you manage staff workload capacity when you throw away the timesheet? How do you manage how much work there is and who has the availability to do those hours?
Okay, Kim, that's a great question. You don't have to throw the timesheet away. When we discussed that, whenever it was Tuesday, I think we talked about that. I know some people like their timesheets, and I know that larger firms in particular are more wedded to the timesheet because they've got more people and more departments and want to measure those things. I know of some very large firms that are successfully trashing the timesheet, and I think Ron Baker told me he now works, I think, or knows of a top 100 US firm that's now done that. You can do it, but you just have to figure out different processes, different measures. And so when I did this in my accounting firm and got rid of the timesheet, one of the things was things like setting targets for how much volume of invoicing each client-facing person had to do. And then what that means each individual person is then becomes responsible for their little unit, which could be just them, or they could have some teams working with them, and they've got targets to work for that they will know within their unit whether or not they've got capacity over the next month or so. This isn't so much about timesheets or pricing. This is more about just basic project management. So I don't really want to go too far into project management because we're off topic right now, but it's about project management, and we don't need the timesheet to manage projects and resources. But I know for larger firms, it's quite hard to get your head around that. Excuse me. And that's why I say, look, you don't have to trash the timesheet. If you want to keep it for now, then do that. I said to you, I think on Tuesday, just have a thought process in your mind that perhaps one day that might happen. Do it when you're comfortable with it. Okay, let's move on to something else, Sarah.
Okay, so Karen says, since value pricing is both a journey and a cost, what can you recommend for someone just starting out? Do you start with hourly for setup and cleanup, then move to a monthly flat fee once you know the transaction volume, and then once you've got some money in the bank, sign up for courses?
I think there's a number of kind of questions there. So if you're just starting out, then as a previous question is, I'm not going to slap you over the wrist if you start with hourly. And it may be you need to do that to build some experience and understanding what costs might be and what workloads involved. If you haven't got the experience, the knowledge, then yes, you might have to start there. Personally, I wouldn't, because if you understand, when the value pricing thing kicks in, you understand it, you realize actually costs are not relevant at all. It's what the customer values. And when you understand that and have processes for building value, adding value, giving choices, giving options, using perhaps software for doing that, and understanding that it's about going in with a high price to start off with, knowing that if they say yes, that's great, because they clearly have now seen the value. But if they say it's too high, you can then change things and work down. You will find that when you do it the right way, you will get higher prices than had you have done hourly billing. But I know that we're scared that if we do it wrong and a lack of confidence, we may initially have a few problems where we give a price and we're actually too low. And that's why people are scared, I think, to make that transition. And so they start with hourly. Cleanup one's a good example, which is why in the training in month 6, we go really deep on cleanup. Because cleanup is a huge opportunity to make a lot of money from cleanup. But I've seen on Facebook posts in other people's groups, many people say, I tried value pricing with cleanup, I got it wrong, so I've gone back to hourly. And I find that really sad because they probably just didn't do it the right way. Because there are far better ways of pricing cleanup work with value pricing. I don't want to go into the detail for that now because there's a whole bunch of training coming on that soon. But there was a second part to your question about return investment. So when should I start to invest in the knowledge and learning things? Well, I think you have to, I did a video on YouTube recently, just a few weeks ago, that you might want to check out. I think it was a video, Emily will know because she might put the link into the chat box if she remembers it. There was a series of 4 videos, Emily, and there was 1 or 2 of them was about this return on investment mindset. One of the things I find is that a lot of the profession are worried about costs, about spending money internally. I hear again on Facebook communities, people saying, oh, that piece of software is really expensive, I'm not buying that software. And I kind of think, well, that's a cost mentality. And the reason why a lot of bookkeepers and some accountants don't really struggle and don't make money is because they're stuck in the cost mentality, not just with pricing, but costs. Whereas an entrepreneur, somebody who builds successful businesses, has a completely different way of thinking about it. They don't think of costs, they think of return on investment. So if there's a piece of software that's going to cost, for argument's sake, let's say there's some software that you could buy for your firm that's $100 a month. The cost-focused accountant or bookkeeper says, that's $100 a month. Wow, that's expensive. $1,200 a year, I'm not going to spend money on that. I'm going to spend money somewhere else. The entrepreneurial accountant, the entrepreneurial bookkeeper says, okay, what would that software do for me? Oh, well, that software is going to save me probably 10 hours every single month. And I know that my time to me is worth $100 an hour. That's $1,000 in time of mine that I can use to win more clients, have pricing conversations, whatever. That's a no-brainer to spend $100 a month, because that's going to free up 10 hours of my time. I know the value of my time and I can get a return on investment. That's entrepreneurial thinking. And so we have to sometimes, if we want to be successful in business, and I guess you're here because you want to be successful in business, we have to learn to think like the entrepreneur does and stop saying, oh, can't afford that course, can't afford that software, can't afford that. We have to think about, well, what will it do for us? Just a quick analogy for you. I, at the moment, do a lot of Facebook ads. I spend thousands on Facebook ads now. At first, I was nervous about it because I was looking at it. Oh, I can't spend $500 every single week on that because I'm not sure I can afford that. That was my old thinking. But then I thought, no, that's crazy, because if I spend this amount of money on Facebook ads, and that means I get this number of people join my Facebook group or go on my list, and I know that of that, a certain proportion buy my course, and every time I spend $500 on Facebook ads, I get $1,000 worth of money coming in for a course, then Facebook's not a cost. It's a return on investment. And then when you think of it in that terms, the question then becomes, okay, so how much money would I spend on Facebook ads? Well, as much money as I can get my hands on, because I can double it. Okay, that's the entrepreneur's way of thinking. I know that was a long answer, but I think your question was an interesting question with multiple parts to it. So I hope that was okay. Hope it serves, hope it helps in some way. Next one, Sarah.
Kim says, I've recently submitted a fixed fee based to a current client who was on daily rates, and I'm now proposing a fixed rate. I've not heard back from that client. How would you recommend I approach the client?
You need to call them. I know we hate that. I'm an introvert in the profession. When I was running my firm, I hated to pick up the telephone. I had an absolute fear of it. But you have to do it. You have to talk to the client. And one of the ways to make it easier for you is whenever you send out anything to do with the price, a proposal, whatever it might well be, tell the client at the end what the next step is. And one of the next steps might be, I'm going to call you in 2 days' time just to check you've got everything and just to see if you've got any questions. If you say that, don't say, I'm going to call you to see if you're happy with the quote. Say, I'm going to call you to see if you've got any questions, if there's anything else I can help you with. Because when you then tell the client you're going to do that, the client's then expecting that conversation, that call. And from your point of view, because you now know the client's expecting a call to see if they've got any questions, it's an easier call to make. And so then you make the call and say, hi, George, as I said I'd follow up to see if you have any questions. I sent you the proposal, the quote, the whatever, a couple of days ago. What questions have you got? What can I help you with? And then you just listen. Because what happens is, we worry about so much stuff. And very often, a lot of the things we worry about are what are called imaginary objections. We worry about all the worst case scenarios. And we worry that George is going to be just not happy with the price and he's going to be shouting at us over the phone. We imagine those worst case things and we hate to deal with it. And sometimes that does happen. We know it does. But sometimes it might be that the client says, I'm so glad you've called. I've been meaning to ring you back, but I've just been so busy. Yes, I did get it. And yeah, it's fine. I'm happy with it. I just wasn't sure what to do next. Thank you for calling. Sometimes it's simple as that, but we fear and we worry about it. So just have the conversation and then just make sure that, okay, just think about then what might you say based on different outcomes. Think about what might you say if he says the price is too high, and have some scripts, some words lined up for that. Sarah, what's the next question we've got?
Oh, sorry. So you promised to answer Janet's question on Tuesday, how to switch an hourly based client to fixed or value pricing.
I did, Janet, but actually, Sarah, I think I've answered that. Because I did do that specifics. I did do the session on moving clients. I said, if I remember right now, if I can remember, what did I say? It was partly it's clients want to move to value pricing. It's about using the right language and talking about the benefits of the new way of pricing. Always focus on the benefits to them. They'll get a fixed price up front. That means they can plan, they can budget. Also, I mentioned that use menu pricing, give people different choices. And I talked about perhaps the strategy you might use and the price points. I also talked about if you're worried about putting your prices up, give them notice, let them know that you're reviewing your prices. But also, every time you communicate something that's negative, turn it into the positive. Turn it into the positive. So yes, it's a price rise, but also tell them we're reviewing our prices, but also reviewing how we can add more value. We've been listening to clients, and clients have been telling us they want more from us. So we've been working out how to make what we do even better to help you achieve your goal, whatever it might all be. Always have a positive spin on any message that goes out. So Jennifer, I hope that stuff from earlier did make sense. You can always catch up on the recording again if you did miss it. Sarah, what's the next question?
Okay, so Fred says, we bundle CFO support stroke advisory services with our bookkeeping support. Should that be considered enhanced support in the premium package?
Fred, yes. If it were me, I would treat them separately. Bookkeeping is a compliance service, which you can value price it, and you can get good prices. But I don't know if you ever looked at the value curve that I think is William Cobb. But as you move up the value curve, you can start to charge higher prices. And for us, CFO services are right towards the top of the value curve. They should be premium priced because of the value of it. And advisory is a long way up there as well. And so mixing highly valuable CFO service and advisory in with bookkeeping, I think is a mistake. I would price them both separately. And what you could also do is, I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things that you could do. You could give people a special deal on the bookkeeping because they're buying your CFO services, your virtual CFO, because that should have a huge amount of profit built into it. And of course, if you're then doing the bookkeeping as well for the client and they're paying you for that, it actually makes your virtual CFO services and your advisory easier, because if you're doing the bookkeeping, then you know the information's right, you know it's 100% right. It makes doing the advice side of things, the advisory, much, much easier. But yes, I would definitely, there's a danger sometimes of bundling too much stuff together. Now, going back to the question, I think it was Dimitri, I think. It's okay to bundle them together in the final proposal if it's because you want to give them a single monthly recurring payment. But the pricing conversation, we treat them separately. But also, I would still have a separate, I mean, here's another issue we've not talked about, but another reason for splitting them out is I would actually have two separate recurring payments. They're paying this amount, this is the subscription, the payment for bookkeeping, this is the amount for the virtual CFO. And here's the reason for that. The virtual CFO services or your advisory services, you may review the price once every 12 months, and you should every 12 months. Bookkeeping, you should review the price every 12 months minimum, because scope of work changes. The scope doesn't change so much with virtual CFO because you're acting like a finance officer, finance director, where you're sitting on the board meetings and stuff. It's not so much about scope of work. That's fairly fixed. It's the value that makes it a valuable service. But bookkeeping can change. What if the client halfway through the year, because of your advice through the virtual CFO side, buys a subsidiary company and suddenly the bookkeeping's doubled? Well, the price of the bookkeeping has to change. And if you price them separately and they pay separately, it's an easier conversation to talk about the change of scope of bookkeeping and leave the virtual CFO as it's going. We're all happy with that. So that's how I would treat very different services. I treat them as separate payments as well as separate pricing, because it's easier to deal with scope issues in that way. Great question. Thanks for that one. Sarah, what do we got next?
Catherine says, can you price weekly?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, you can absolutely price weekly. But Catherine, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what your question is, but it prompts an interesting answer. So do you mean price weekly? Do you mean get paid weekly? And those two things can be different, by the way. What you may be getting at is something I teach sometimes. One of the really powerful techniques with price psychology is what I call chunk it down. If you can express your price as a smaller number by chunking it down, it feels less. So, and this is really powerful. If you're a CPA or an accountant, pricing things like annual work, like end of year financial statements, which historically we might have priced as an annual figure. It's going to cost you $6,000 a year to do your annual financial statements. If you instead price it as $500 a month, it has a huge impact on the perception of price. And I'm not going to go to the evidence and the research now, because that's something for another day, price psychology. But it's an extremely powerful technique. And we can chunk down the number. Usually it's monthly, but sometimes we can chunk it down to weekly, particularly where we do work weekly. Bookkeeping and payroll are good examples. We can give a weekly price for bookkeeping, even if we only collect the money monthly. You don't really have to. So you can express the price and have your collection process different. That's perfectly fine. Okay, I don't know if that was what you were getting at, but it's an interesting area of price psychology. Is fascinating. There's so many fascinating things we can do with the way that we express our numbers, express the price, that makes the price seem so much less. Sarah, what should we do next?
Okay, so Oni says, in your presentation of price option, you present the premium package first, then the middle, then the basic. Is that personal preference, or is it strategic to list the top first?
Oni, it's strategic. I presume you are referring to when I showed you the software, which you can do the other way around if you want. Most people, most businesses that use that way of presenting price, they put the cheapest one on the left and the most expensive on the right. That's the norm. It's the wrong way. It's the wrong way. There's some research by Suckley and Lichtenstein, I think it is, back in 2012, and they did an interesting series of experiments. And one of them was it was about beer. One of the things I love about price psychology and behavioral economics is many of the studies are based around beer and wine. So they went to a bar, and as I think is fairly common in the US, behind the bar was, like Starbucks, was a list of all the beers with the price. And what they did is they did a test where they put the beers in order from the cheapest down to the most expensive. And they did some measures over the next few weeks. They measured sales, average sale per transaction, and then they made a change. They flipped it and had the most expensive at the top and worked down. And what they found was that the average amount of spend was much, much higher when the most expensive was listed at the top. And the reason for that is because most people read a list from top to bottom. And there were a number of different psychological effects that then kick in because the order is really important. So I call this the price order effect. Now, if you're listing prices horizontally, like you saw in the software, in the Western world, we usually read from left to right. And because of that, the first price you see creates an anchor in the mind. Okay? The reason why you don't see it very often is because people just haven't come across the research yet. Well, I noticed, I've done a lot of work for Intuit over the last few years. I speak at Cubic Connect a lot, and I noticed in one of the regions of Intuit, they'd flipped it. Whether that's because they'd heard me or then gone and read the research, they flipped the order. They don't do it consistently though. I don't know why, but there you go. Psychology is fascinating. Little things like that can make a huge impact on people's perceptions of prices. Okay, Sarah, what should we do next? Whose question?
So Brenda says, does the program, and I assume that's the effective pricing software, come up with basic packages and prices?
Brenda, assuming that's what you mean, yeah. So Brenda, if you join the academy and you then get the software, what we have done for you, what I've done is we've built some models for you. You've seen some of them already. I showed you bookkeeping. We're still building some, and so we'll have other ones as well. We've got bookkeeping, cloud accounting set up. We will have payroll, and so they come with my suggested questions, settings, to some extent prices. And then you can decide whether you go with them as they are or whether you change them. And one of the reasons why we're only making it available to Academy members is because in the live sessions as we work together, when I teach you things, I will sometimes open up the software and show you how to do it, how to change it, because I want you to get results fast. So yes, I create stuff for you. I create systems, I create the stuff because my goal is to help all my students to be extremely successful and get results as fast as possible. I hope that was the question you're asking about the software. Sarah, next.
Teresa says, how does the brochure work in the times of COVID social distancing and having Zoom meetings?
The brochure works really well because, and I run a virtual business, which is why we're now living in Portugal. And virtual meetings are great. I love Zoom. I spend most of my life on Zoom. And the thing is, we'd had this conversation, I think, yesterday. Someone asked the same question yesterday, but I'll repeat it quickly. Zoom calls or virtual calls are almost as good as face-to-face meetings, as long as you use a webcam so that you can get across your passion, your enthusiasm, get across your personality, and you can see the other person. But also because with things like Zoom, we do screen share as well. So you've seen lots of things on my screen during the course of these 3 days. And so when it comes to a brochure, you can have a PDF. I showed you a few screenshots earlier, but you can have the full thing as a PDF, filling up your screen, and you walk the client through it in a virtual world. That works really, really well. And sometimes people say to me, Mark, if I create a brochure, should I get them physically printed or have a PDF? Well, if you're having virtual meetings, a PDF is sufficient. You can save yourself the printing costs. If you're having face-to-face meetings, I would recommend you print them. And the reason for that is because, and it's a weird quirk of human nature, but we perceive more value in things that we can touch and feel. It's a bit like, if you think about books, we now have Kindle books, but Kindle books are very often less money than the paperback and less than the hardback. It's the same information. It's the same book. There's no difference in the content, but we place a higher value on a physical book than a digital book, even though it's the same. We place more value in the physical. And so if you're having face-to-face meetings, if it were me personally, I would tend to have printed brochures. But even with face-to-face, there's nothing wrong with you having a PDF on your screen and walking the client through it. Sarah, next question.
Okay, so Sharon says, professional brochures, what type of brochures? Knowledge brochures or firm-specific brochures?
When I'm talking about, Sharon, when I'm talking about brochures, I'm talking specifically about pricing brochures. That's what I was talking about. Because someone once said on a LinkedIn post, they said, Mark's always talking about marketing brochures. That's so old fashioned. No, these aren't marketing brochures. This is for pricing. This is a tool that you use in the meeting to, first and foremost, it becomes your agenda. It gives you a reminder of what to say. So you say the right things in the right order as you build up the value. It's a pricing tool. It's a pricing system. Now, as a side benefit, you can use it as a marketing tool as well. One of the things I often get asked by Academy members is they say, Mark, I love the words in these brochures. Can I put the brochures or some of the words on the website? And my answer to that is, when you're an Academy member, you can use the brochures and the words I give you in any way you want within your firm. And if you like some of the sections, if you want to talk about the pain of bookkeeping and you love the way I've worded it, you can put it on your website and use it from a marketing point of view as well. But when I talk about brochures, I am specifically talking about from a pricing point of view. Next question, Sarah.
Okay, sorry. So Shirley says, how do you compete with value of your services against these tech companies that are super cheap, but also offer with their services access to one-on-one help? They often time include it with the same cheap price.
Goes back to what I said earlier. Focus on being better. Focus on you. The one, yes, these tech companies might offer some form of one-on-one support to make it cost effective and keep those low prices. They're going to be people who either aren't as skilled as you, or it's going to be a very time limited amount of support. One of the mistakes I see that smaller firms do, and particularly if you're a solo bookkeeper or solo accountant, is smaller firms tend to have smaller prices. And the question I would then ask is, why are your prices less than KPMG? Why are your prices less than Deloitte? Why are your prices less than the big firms? Because what you offer people is something that they can't do as well. You see, if you're a client of Deloitte, unless you're a huge business like Apple or something, you probably never meet the senior partner. You're just dealing with an employee. But when a client works with you, they get to work with you, the owner of the business. And for a smaller business, a small firm, a family-owned business, for example, turning over a million, to work one-on-one with the partner, that's really valuable. They won't get that at Deloitte or KPMG or PwC. And so one of the things that we have as a huge advantage is the personal contact, the relationship. And we are in a relationship industry. People want, when I say people, we don't want every client. There are some clients that just want the cheapest price. Just like there are some people that get their wills done with these online will things. They're never going to be as good as having a lawyer do something bespoke, but some people just want that. Some people just want the cheapest. That's not everybody. There is so much business out there, and there are so many people that want somebody that wants to understand their business, that wants to be interested in their business, that wants to help them grow their business. And they're the people that are going to value working with somebody like you. So never underestimate the value of the relationship of working with you if you're a smaller firm, and play on that. They don't get that working with large firms and technology firms to automating bookkeeping and so on. Sarah, next question.
Cindy Thomas says, how do you address I can't afford it versus that's too expensive?
Okay, so if you've revealed your price and if they can't afford it, they can't afford it. Okay, if it's too expensive, if I say it's too expensive, you want to start asking questions and objection handling, and to start to understand why, because it may well be that, and usually the too expensive answer means they just don't understand the value. So sometimes we have to go back through the building up the value. We've not explained it properly. We might need to go and ask them, so what is it what is it about this service that's not delivering what you really want? Would be a question you could ask, because there's clearly something that's stopping them buying. Something that's not quite making sense to them. So we have to ask questions. So we need to have our objection handling systems and questions and processes. If it turns out the reason genuinely is they can't afford you, then it's not the right client for you. There are people out there that can't afford you. If they can't afford you, recommend them to a cheap accountant or a cheap bookkeeper, because the goal isn't to work with everybody. Okay. If you are attracting people that can't afford you, that's a marketing problem. It's a positioning problem. It's because our marketing's aimed at the wrong types of people, like we're putting cheap prices on a website. One of the things that a lot of the people I now work with in the academy are starting to do is I teach the form of words and the processes and why you should charge for the initial meetings, because that weeds out the tire kickers. It weeds out the pitter clients. We have to be confident about what we can do, about our value, and recognize that, some people just can't afford us. Now, I know that somebody asked, when it comes to objection handling, we're now kind of into the area of sales skills. I'm not an expert in sales skills. I know a little bit. I'm the expert in pricing. But yesterday I had a good friend of mine, Roger Connect, who was on the call, and he says, Mark, if anyone wants help with selling, I've got some processes and places people can go to. So if anyone wants help with selling, sales skills, let me know via the Facebook group. I have other people I can refer you to. I do not profess to be an expert on sales skills, and so I'd rather just let you know who the right people to talk to. Right, what's the next question, Sarah? And
okay, so, pardon?
Go, should we do what, another 10, 15, 20 minutes, Sarah? I'll leave up to you.
Yeah. Lisa DeHaas says, one customer has asked if they can stay on hourly billing instead of proposed fixed pricing because his business is downscaled. How can I handle that?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And that's interesting as well, because I never get anybody in the UK say to me, my client wants hourly. But in the US, it does happen from time to time. And I never quite understand the mindset of the client that wants hourly. But anyway, it does happen. It happens. Sometimes clients insist on hourly. If that's the case, you have two choices. One choice is that, well, we're not the firm for you. Let me recommend a firm that charges by the hour. So you could just say no. But the other option you've got is to do hourly. But what you want to do is make sure that you explain and use, it's all about the language and the words that you use. And those of you that join, if you ever join the Value Pricing Academy, I have full scripts and stuff for all of this because I build it into something I call the perfect proposal process for creating great proposals. And one of the things that you might want to do is, or what you want to do is, if someone wants hourly, make sure you explain and put it in writing that there are two options. Option number one is hourly. Option number two is a fixed price. But what you do in the language, you want to make sure your language describes the downsides of hourly. You can't plan, you can't budget, and so on. And the upsides of a fixed value-based price. You can plan, you can budget, you get a price up front. So language is really important. But if they still insist, no, but I still want the hourly, then one of the things that I strongly recommend, and this is a big problem with hourly, is, and I'm conscious of going off at tangents now, but one of the things that we are terrible at in our profession is collecting money. Let me ask you a rhetorical question. Think about your firm right now. Think about your balance sheet. On your balance sheet, do you have debtors if you're in the UK, or accounts receivable? In other words, do you have clients that owe you money right now? And if the answer is yes, my question is, well, why? Why? Because we're in the service industry. There is no excuse whatsoever for an accounting firm or a bookkeeping firm to have people owing money, to have accounts receivable or debtors on your balance sheet. That's crazy. That money should be in your pocket, in your bank account. We're in the service industry. But the problem is, if we're hourly, if we're pricing based on hourly, then we don't know what the price is till we've done the work and got the work in progress report and worked out the number of hours and multiplied by hourly rates. And so what happens is that one of the problems of hourly is that we bill the client after the event, after we've done the work, and then we keep our fingers crossed that hopefully they might pay us. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If we want value pricing or having a fixed price, we could be, one of the benefits is that if we give a price up front, we can also insist on payment up front, which you must and should do. And one of the things I teach in the Value Pricing Academy is different payment methodologies and the words and the language and the scripts you use. But let's get back to the question, because I know I'm going for tangents right now. Sorry. And so the question was, yes. So if you've got a client that insists on hourly, also build into your system the proposal, the fixed price agreement, and explain that if they choose hourly, they pay you a deposit, because you want to have money up front that equates to your best guess at how much the first month's work's going to be. And then you bill them once a month or whatever the cycle happens to be, and they pay that bill, but you're always up front by the deposit. Okay? Because cash flow is so important in your business. And I know from my own bitter experience in the first 3 years of running my business, is cash flow for me was terrible. I had bank debt spiraling out of control. I nearly went bankrupt in December 1999. I thought I was successful growing this big firm, and I was weeks away from having to close the doors. It was 2 weeks before Christmas. I had no money to pay the salaries. And in the UK, we tend to pay salaries a week early for Christmas. I ain't got the money to pay my people. And that was the lowest point in my business life. Fortunately, there was things that I did which managed to turn things around and put me on the journey of what I'm doing now. But one of the things that I was terrible at was collecting money. Okay, next question. What have we got, Sarah?
Sorry.
No worries.
A question, how do you use, forgive me, I don't know what the abbreviation means, do you use any OCR technology to help with your accounting, such as ReceiptBank or HubDoc?
OCR is optical character recognition.
There you go.
Personally, no, I don't. It's not really a question for me, so I'm not sure I can help with technical stuff. I've designed my business to be really, really simple. We have a bookkeeper in the UK called Caroline. She's an awesome person. She's expensive, but I value what she does. And she does the bookkeeping. We have a paperless office, and just keep things as simple as possible. But I'm not a typical business, I guess. I can't answer that question any more than that because I think it's more of a technical question. I'm not sure what you were getting at. I couldn't see why it was a pricing question. So forgive me, that might just be my shortcomings. Sarah, what's the next question?
Okay, so Dimitar says, what could be the approach to communicate with a client that purely seeks low price service? I think you've kind of answered that.
I have done. It comes down to scripts. You need to prepare the scripts, the words. If you get these sorts of objections, just prepare what you're going to say. So if you have clients that ask you for a lower price because they just want the cheapest, you might say, look, we can't do that. One of the things that is fundamental to us and as part of our values of our firm is we want to deliver the best possible quality of service that we can deliver. We want to deliver better service than any other accounting firm or any other bookkeeping firm. But we also know that we cannot deliver you with great service if we compromise on price. It's not possible to give you the best service for a lower price. We're not willing to charge a lower price because we're not willing to compromise on the quality. If you're looking for a cheap accountant, if you're looking for a cheap bookkeeper, let me recommend you to a few that are down the road that will be just right for you. It's just about having the scripts. If they want the cheapest, you do not want them. Okay, please remember, I've said that several times today, you do not want them. They'll just fill up your life with clutter and you'll just end up working crazy hard just to try and make ends meet. There are plenty more clients out there. And interestingly, what will happen, if you're thinking right now, I just got loads of rubbish clients, that's probably because you're too cheap. If you're too cheap, you attract rubbish clients. If you change your pricing, if you change your positioning, your method, your messaging, if you start to become more professional, you will attract better quality clients. It just happens. And if you don't believe me, talk to people in the academy and they'll tell you that now they've changed the way they do business. They're getting better quality clients. You will attract the sorts of people based upon your positioning and your pricing. Pricing sends out signals into the marketplace. If you have low pricing, the marketplace will see you as being low quality. It's the way the world works. And interestingly, last point before I go on to the next question. Interestingly, some people say, I want to be cheaper because I'll get more clients. If I'm expensive, I'll lose clients. But interestingly, I know it sounds paradoxical, and there's some examples of this, when you become more expensive, you can also attract more clients. So I said to you, if you put your price up by 20% and you lose 20% of clients, you're no worse off. It is possible to put your price up by 20% and get 20% more clients. And we see this in all sorts of industries. If you think about Apple, they're crazy expensive. And look at the growth of market share in the last decade. It's extraordinary. Starbucks, most expensive coffee shop on the planet. You go to San Francisco, they're on every flipping corner because people go to buy from Starbucks. Because most people in society want quality. Some want the cheapest price, but the right people want quality. When you focus on quality and value first, you can actually get more clients by being expensive. Next question, Sarah.
Another anonymous, how can you effectively price the client if you don't have access to the pricing software? He loves the attendee loves the concept of the software and being able to use questions and checkboxes to change the package prices, but he's a small proprietor, can't afford the membership cost. Do you do the intake questions first, then go away and create the packages based on responses, or what?
For bookkeeping services, I have no idea. And this is why back in 1999, when I first came across value pricing, I didn't need software for pricing many services. My first service was in corporations because there's not a lot of scope issues there. It was quite relatively straightforward. But I was a chartered accountant. Most of my work was annual financial statements. It wasn't so much bookkeeping for me, it was annual financial statements, annual accounts, we call it in the UK. And I was wrestling with this. How do I give a price up front when every client is different? There's some are big, some are small, limited companies, sole traders, different industries, some with good records, some with bad records. I had to go through the process that I taught you yesterday, the regression analysis, and I could have built an Excel spreadsheet. I happen to know somebody, a good friend of mine called Shane Lucas, who now runs AVN, and we worked together and built a piece of software for my accounting firm at the end, which we had ready by the end of 1999. That made such a huge difference to me. And so when I first started the Value Pricing Academy in 2014, I was asked I had people saying, so how do I come up with a price for bookkeeping? And I'm thinking, I don't know, because there's so many scope factors, you need a complicated model. And so I said, don't worry, I'll go and build something for you. And that's when we built cloud pricing in 2015 for the people to help with that issue. So if you've got a service where scope isn't that complicated, setting someone up on a cloud accounting system, for example, doing tax returns, you could do it you could create something fairly simplistic. Once you build in complexity into a service, so bookkeeping, cleanup work, annual financial statements, there's so many scope factors. And so if you oversimplify it, then you get your pricing wrong, you'll be too cheap, or you'll probably sometimes find you give a fixed price and the scope was way more than you expected. And so we need to have a system, and whether that's something like effective pricing, or you create your own spreadsheet, do that if you want to, but I'm hoping yesterday I gave you the framework to use. And it's up to you whether you use my software or create an Excel spreadsheet or some sort of system, but hopefully you've got the framework to use. I don't know how else you can, unless you become, once you get to the sense where you master value pricing, and remember it's not easy, but when you master value pricing and the light bulb comes on, you realize costs are irrelevant. And when you become really good at the value conversation, uncovering value and so on, you don't need software at that point. At that point, you are able to just, based on experience and the right communication, you'll be able to come up with just numbers, because as I said, there's no formula for value pricing. Value pricing is a feeling, it's an emotion, it's a gut feel. And so when you master value pricing, you don't need software. But I would guess nobody's at that stage. I would struggle without software. I'd struggle without a system. So you need to work out your own system for doing that. Of course, all the other things you mentioned, yes, you still need to have packages, and you can do that without software. You can have brochures without software. You can have the value conversation. But it's the piece of, for bookkeeping, how do you come up with that number without some sort of process like effective pricing? I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know. That's why I created it. If anyone ever figures out the answer, then I'd love to know. Sarah, what's the next question?
Okay, shall we make this the last one? So how would you go about setting the base prices to use in the effective pricing model system you showed?
How will you use? Okay, great question. So a number of different possibilities. Number one, I'm just going to be three. Number one, use the models that I've created, which have got numbers in there, and then test it on a handful of clients in the safety of your office. So just put 3 or 4 clients through and just see if the prices freak you out, or anything. Oh, that's okay. It's really easy in the software to then go behind the scenes and make a couple of changes just to bring the prices into line with something that you feel comfortable with. So you could use the parameters and the formulas that I've built in, and then you could just flex it a little bit based on just putting a handful of clients through there and seeing what numbers come out. That's option number one. Option number two is you could go and do all that regression analysis yourself and then based on regression analysis, you can take the formula that you come up with and you can build it into the system. And that would be a great thing to do. A third option is you could use, I am going to build into the system the model, the regression analysis model I did based on the benchmarking survey last year. I will be building in a simple fixed pricing model that builds that formula as well, that you could use that. That's the third option. But let me just go back to the first option again. The model that I showed you, the numbers built into there are not based on last year's survey and regression analysis. Those numbers are largely based on my gut feel. From 20 years in the profession, well, no, 20 years of teaching value pricing, for 30 years in the profession, it's largely based on gut feel. And a lot of people have said to me over the last 20 years, I've had software for 20 years, I've been teaching for 20 years. A lot of people say your prices, they're a bit higher than I'm expecting, than I charge, but they're giving me great results. And the reason for that is because they say that is because they're not based on a formula. They're based on kind of a feeling for what the prices should be. And so put some clients through there, put them through the system, look at my prices, see how they come out. If they come out 10, 20, 30% higher, go with that. Because the idea is to get higher prices and to push your comfort zones, push the boundaries, knowing that with the software you can change things. And there's things I haven't shown you yet, like behavior rewards. You can always change the package in various different ways. Don't use the software to come up with prices the same as what you've been charging before, because you're no better off then. You want to be pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries, because it's all about getting better prices. Hope that answers that particular question. I'm sure, I know there'll be loads more questions to do with the software. Remember that what we'll be doing is we go live at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Monday, and we go live, if you're going to go through this process, this journey, we go live first of all with a session that's going to be about 45 minutes where I'll show you where all the training is, how to get started, and I'll talk you through exactly all the resources you've got and answer questions. And then when we finish that session, I've then got an optional session, again of about 45 minutes, where I will show you how to get the software, how to set it up, and answer questions. So we'll spend about 45 minutes next Monday, where I will show you as much as I can in the software and help you to start getting set up fast, to start getting some results so you can start feeling confident to play around with it and then start using it. So I'm going to just wrap up by just saying thank you so much for coming along. And those of you that have been with me for 3 days now, we've been 2.5 hours today. So what's that? I think we've been doing about 6-7 hours worth of training. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for listening. I hope that you've taken something away from this. Please share with me in the Facebook group. What's been the best bit of it? What have you learned from this? How have you found this three day set of sessions, this masterclass? I'd love to get your feedback. Many of you I know have said that you're going to join me in the academy or the course itself. And so I look forward to working with you. If you haven't made that decision yet, then you've still got a few more days, but just remember, once we start, that's it live, and it's then another 6 months before we're then going to do this again. We'll run this in 6 months' time, and the price will be higher in 6 months. So if you want the price locked in, now's the time to join. If you've got any questions, if there's things you're thinking about, and perhaps over the weekend you're thinking, should I join, shouldn't I join? Maybe you've got questions. And if you've got questions, let us know. Email Sarah. You can email Sarah anytime you want if you've got questions about working together. You can always post your questions into the Facebook group. And also remember that if you decide to go say yes, you've still got 30 days where you can change your mind. And if it's not adding value, you can ask for your first month's payment back. So the only decision you've really got to make, the only decision is it worth investing $156 or whatever it is in your currency? You'll find it on the website. Is it worth investing 156? Because you can stop then and you can even ask for that back. Is it worth 156? Based on everything I've learned so far and heard from the Carla story and Lana's story, do I feel I could get that back in higher prices? And the answer I know from experience is that if you take action, if you come to my sessions, if you take action and do stuff, I'd be surprised if you can't get that money back. This is a return on investment. I've had firms that have added thousands to their bottom line profit in the first 6-12 months working with me because They're putting their price up. They're getting 10% more, 20% more. If you're a firm that does 100 grand in revenue and you can get 20% higher, that's 20 grand to your bottom line profit. There's a huge opportunity to get a return on investment for a relatively small monthly price. So why not give it a try before the price goes up, knowing that you've then got 30 days to change your mind if necessary. Anyway, any questions, just ask. Ask in the Facebook group, email Sarah. Thank you so much for coming along. I appreciate your time that you've invested in listening to me, and I'm sure I'll see you online sometime again soon, or we'll chat on Facebook. Bye for now.